Chapter 1488. As Han Yuyin thought about it, she stayed in the car and did not move. It was Lin Ji's turn. She wore a splendid dress and exquisite makeup. She was beautiful and dazzling. When she walked on the red carpet, the foreign reporters did not recognize her. They were not interested in her, so they whispered to each other. The domestic media was extremely excited. They raised their cameras and took pictures of her like crazy. Lin Ji kept waving at the media. It was rare for her to walk the red carpet, so she enjoyed the attention of everyone. Even when the security guards came up to maintain order and let her in quickly, she still refused to leave the red carpet and kept blowing kisses at the media. In the end, he had no choice but to be half-dragged and half-dragged by the security guard. Han Yuyin sat in the car. When she saw this scene, she sneered. Country bumpkin. She had not seen the world. She did not know how this Lin Ji got into the Milan fashion show. She came here to make a fool of herself. What a disgrace. She did not want to walk with such a person and be compared to her. It would be degrading. On the list, only Mu Yaja, Yin Shishir, and Han Yuyin had not made their appearance. The person in charge of the red carpet ran over to invite Han Yuyin. Han Yuyin asked, "When is Yin Shishir leaving?" "What do you mean?" "When she leaves, I'll leave after her. How can we let her be the finale at such a big event? For this final scene, you should let someone of my level come to control the situation." The person in charge curled his lips contemptuously. This Han Yuyin was really naive. Naturally, Yin Shishir would not be the last to appear. She probably did not know that Yin Shishir and Mu Yaja were walking the red carpet together. "You're really not leaving?" The person in charge was running out of patience. In order to invite this person to the red carpet, he had gone back and forth several times. He had been polite at the beginning, but now his patience was running out. If she did not leave, he would not invite her again. However, Han Yuyin had already made up her mind. She made her stand clear and emphasized, "I want to walk the red carpet after Yin Shishir." As soon as he finished speaking, the person in charge left helplessly. Han Yuyin closed the car door and rolled her eyes mockingly. "Yin Shishir, you want to fight with me?" He was still too inexperienced. The red carpet was nearing its end. All of the media were eagerly waiting to find out who the big shot would be at the end of the show. The scene was still very lively. This was a rare fashion event in Italy. It was Mu Yaja's first time walking the red carpet in Milan with a female partner, and it was also Yin Shishir's first time appearing in front of the cameras with him. She was so nervous that she almost suffocated. Yin Shishir clasped her hand over her heart and looked at the flashing spotlights on the red carpet. For a moment, all the spotlights were on, and it was as bright as day, illuminating the silent night. Mu Yaja saw her taking deep breaths and smiled. His originally cold eyes were filled with gentleness and affection. Nervous? Yes, a little. Yin Shishir did not mince her words. It was embarrassing to say that this was the first time she had seen such a big event. There were hundreds and thousands of reporters from different countries all over the world. Now, they were all gathered together to witness this glittering fashion event. In a crowded crowd, the bodyguard were trying their best to maintain order. Chapter 1489. Mu Yaja held her hand gently and kissed her fingertips. The moment he looked down, the tenderness in his eyes seemed to melt her. The wind outside the window was bitterly cold, but at this moment, she felt a sense of warmth in her heart. "Hold my hand when you get out of the car, okay?" He tried his best to soothe her uneasy heartbeat with his gentle voice. The Bentley slowly stopped at the end of the red carpet. From the rearview mirror, Yin Shishir could see many reporters swarming around the car door. They held up their cameras and flashed their flashlights continuously. Every one of them was trying to be the first to capture this scene before everyone else. The bodyguards immediately rushed over to divert the crowd. Unfortunately, the media was too crazy. Mu Yaja smiled, opened the door, and got out of the car. Then, under the bright flashlights, he turned around and held her hand. Yin Shishir held his hand and slowly got out of the car. Her gorgeous cheongsam and her exquisite and perfect figure were exposed to everyone's eyes. "Oh my God, it's Yin Shishir. Is she the newcomer who sat next to Gu Xingze at the fashion show? I remember her. Her figure in the ink painting on the red carpet was simply stunning." Yin Shishi's appearance at tonight's fashion show was not surprising. However, what was unexpected was that her male companion on the red carpet was actually Mu Yaja. Mu Yaja. This name, even when placed in the international arena, was like thunder to one's ears. As the top celebrity in the business world, the Mu family was one of the wealthiest families in the business world. Mu Yaja was the head of the Mu family and the CEO of Dishing Financial Group. He used to be the young master of the Mu family and was now the CEO of Dishing Financial Group. His appearance on the red carpet was the biggest surprise of tonight's event. Actually, Milan's fashion show would send VIP invitations to the Mu family every spring and autumn. After Mu Yaja received the invitations, he would always throw them aside and ignore them. His appearance was a veritable VIP. Tonight, he was dressed in a handmade suit. He was tall and straight, slender and handsome. His delicate facial features softened the charm of Oriental classics and the profound mystery of European descent. His exquisite silhouette was full of heroic spirit. However, compared to the past, there was less coldness. Because of the woman beside him, there was more gentleness between his brows. When he and Yin Shishi appeared on the red carpet, they instantly outshone the crowd. Magnesium lights flashed across the sky, causing half of the night sky to be as bright as day in an instant. It's the CEO of Mu Group, Mu Yaja. I heard that he's a business genius. He's young and talented. The reporters were in a frenzy. It seemed that no one had expected that tonight's finale guest would be the rumored scion of a prestigious family, Mu Yaja. Mu Yaja held Yin Shishi's hand and walked towards the end of the red carpet. Shocking. It was really too shocking. In the past, there had been female celebrities and male guests on the red carpet together. However, it was rare for such a pair to be so good-looking. The man was so handsome. The woman was gentle and moving. A talented and beautiful couple, a golden couple. This was it. Mu Yaja was calm and collected. When he held Yin Shishi's hand and walked to the center of the red carpet, the reporters burst into screams. Stop! Stand where you are and take a group photo, okay? Chapter 1490. Yin Shishi, can you smile? Hearing this, Yin Shishi cooperatively revealed a charming smile, which instantly captivated the reporters in the press gallery. Even some of the international reporters were mesmerized by her smile. It was too beautiful, especially this Chong Sam. When she wore it, it was indescribably beautiful. She exuded a sense of asceticism from head to toe. Chinese elements were highly valued overseas. Many fashion weeks had Chinese-themed fashion shows. This time, the Milan Fashion Week also had a Chinese-themed show. Especially the Chong Sam, it was once the favorite of many Hollywood actresses. However, it was because of the difference in their bloodlines. How could those blonde-haired and blue-eyed foreign actresses exude the charm of the Chong Sam and its unique classical mystery? These reporters had attended so many events and could be considered to have seen countless people. However, they could not pick out a female actress who wore a Chong Sam and was as beautiful as Yin Shishi. The red high heels on her feet were based on classical elements. It matched the gown very well. Yin Shishi, look over here. A cry of surprise came from the group of reporters. Yin Shishi immediately looked in the direction of the sound, and the smile on her face became even more beautiful. The magnesium lights flashed even more fiercely. Yin Shishi and Mu Yaja cooperated with the media's request and got closer to each other to take a few photos. The two of them stood together and looked very compatible. The celebrities who had already walked the red carpet and were standing at the entrance of the venue could not help but whisper. Many of the celebrities who had rushed over from China to attend the Fashion Week banquet were silently guessing the relationship between Yin Shishi and Mu Yaja. Mu Yaja was the big boss of Huanyu. The huge Huanyu was just a branch of Dishing Holdings. Mu Yaja could be said to be the king of the entertainment empire. However, it did not decrease that he had held the hand of any female actress and attended such a banquet together. No one could tell what the relationship between the two of them was. Many people were so jealous that they gritted their teeth. Who would believe that Yin Shishi didn't have any background? She had just debuted, and she already had so many resources. She was also involved in a scandal with Gu Xingze, and she was walking the red carpet with such a prestigious figure like Mu Yaja. Could it be that she was Mu Yaja's pet? However, Mu Yaja rarely had any scandals in the circle. It was rare for him to be so close to any female celebrity. Previously, Mu Yaja had a fiancée. However, a while ago, Mu Yaja held a press conference and announced that Mu Yaja and Mu Wanru had broken off their engagement. This news made many people jump for joy. At this moment, Yun Shih and Mu Yaja had become the focus of everyone's attention. At the request of the media, Mu Yaja intimately hugged Yun Shih's waist and planted a kiss between her eyebrows. The reporters all captured this sensational kiss of the century. When Han Yuyin saw this scene in the car, she suddenly couldn't sit still. She couldn't help but feel annoyed. She watched helplessly as Yun Shih and Mu Yaja walked down the red carpet together. She was in a bad mood. She thought that Yun Shih deliberately wanted to be the last to appear. She didn't expect that she was arranged to be the last to appear because she had a big shot like Mu Yaja. She cursed fiercely in her heart. What kind of person was Yun Shih to be able to appear on the red carpet with Mu Yaja? Mu Yaja rarely appeared in front of the camera. Chapter 1491. Han Yuyin couldn't help but let her imagination run wild. What was the relationship between Yun Shih and Mu Yaja? How could they stand so intimately together and walk the red carpet together? Mu Yaja was a tycoon in the business world, but he had always been handsome and aloof. There had never been any women around him. Yun Shih was probably the first. Could it be? Han Yuyin couldn't sit still when she saw this. All of a sudden, she began to suspect that she had underestimated Yun Shih. Maybe this Yun Shih wasn't such a simple newcomer. Yun Shih stood in the middle of the red carpet with a smile. She looked so charming, as if she was an otherworldly socialite who had walked out of an ancient painting. She also had a hint of arrogance and provocation. Her beauty was different from her usual reserved and pure look. She was flamboyant and sharp, like a blooming poppy. Even if people knew that it was highly toxic, they would rather drink poison to quench their thirst. Mu Yaja hugged her waist and faced the spotlights calmly. He rarely showed himself in front of the camera like this. In front of the camera, he was insufferably arrogant, exuding the extraordinary aura of a king. He had an imposing appearance and a heroic spirit. The intimidating elegance between his eyebrows made countless female celebrities fall head over heels for him and fall head over heels for him. Any one of his photos didn't even need post-processing. His handsome and exquisite looks completely crushed all the little fresh meats in the entertainment industry and even the international male models in the fashion industry. He was too handsome. Very few people had the honor of seeing him in person. Many people were deeply shocked by his aura, so much so that for a moment, the cameraman's movements slowed down a little. Many female celebrities were so jealous that they didn't know where Yun Shih got the good fortune to be able to walk the red carpet with Mu Yaja. Those female celebrities who were racking their brains for tomorrow's headlines were a little frustrated at this moment. With Yun Shih like this, she would definitely dominate the headlines tomorrow. There was no hope for them. The domestic and foreign media took photos crazily to capture this historic scene. Sure. Can you stay close to Chairman Mu? One more, thank you. Chairman Mu, hold her tighter. Mu Yaja did not give the reporters any extra chances. As soon as the time was up, he hugged Yun Shih and walked towards the autograph board, causing the media to scramble to follow them. Mu Yaja approached the signature board and took the pen that was handed to him. He then signed his name on the blank space on the board in a flamboyant and elegant manner. The tip of his brush was handsome and powerful. His words were just like him, arrogant and flamboyant. Every stroke was full of tension. In the past, such a signature would only appear on trade contracts that were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. This was the first time it appeared in an event that had nothing to do with business. After Mu Yaja signed his name, he handed the pen to Yun Shih. Yun Shih took the pen and smiled gently. She raised her wrist and signed her name beside his. The tip of the pen was graceful and her handwriting was very beautiful. It was not inferior to his. After signing his name, Muyaja and Yun Shishir walked to the interview area. Qingzhou had told them not to ask any irrelevant questions. Once they did, they would be asked to leave the banquet. The media was very respectful of the Mu group. Therefore, they did not dare to be rash. Hence, most of the questions revolved around Yun Shishir's speech for attending the fashion show. Chapter 1492. Do I need a reason to walk on the red carpet with anyone? Muyaja asked him back. The reporter was speechless. Such an arrogant response had a strong personal style. Muyaja had always been casual and arrogant. Hence, the reporter asked Yun Shishir another question. Shishir, are you nervous about walking on the red carpet with Chairman Mu this time? Yun Shishir smiled and said, How could I? Before she could finish her sentence. The reporter quickly asked, Why are you in such a good mood? Yun Shishir chuckled and added, How could I not be nervous? The reporter was silent. Friendly laughter came from the media. Yun Shishir said wittily, I'm too nervous, so I'm sweating when I talk. Yun Shishir was already good at dealing with the media. She already knew how to use words to cleverly avoid difficult topics. Her clever on-the-spot response made the media laugh in disappointment. Haha, Shishir is so cute. Hence, they did not make things difficult for her. They asked a few friendly questions and ended the interview. Muyaja and Yun Shishir walked into the venue. Qingzhou watched their backs disappear at the end of the red carpet and sighed. He also walked into the venue. Seeing that it was about time, Han Yuyin thought to herself, Now, I can finally make my appearance, right? Hence, she opened the car door and adjusted her elegant and arrogant posture. She lifted the hem of her dress and walked out of the car. At first, she thought that Yun Shishir deliberately wanted to be the last. Only then did she realize that it was because she was on Muyaja's list. She used Muyaja's name to delay her appearance. However, this was good. At least, she was the real last. Thinking of this, Han Yuyin's face showed a proud smile. She lifted the hem of her dress and walked gracefully to the red carpet. However, when she walked to the red carpet, she saw that the people in the venue were busy closing the red carpet. The corner of Han Yuyin's mouth twitched, but she still maintained her elegant smile. She signaled her assistant with her eyes. The assistant immediately ran forward and said in fluent English, Wait, there's still an artist who hasn't left. What? Our artist, Han Yuyin, hasn't walked the red carpet yet. Let's wrap it up later. It's time. That person snorted rudely and ignored her, continuing with the movement of his hands. Han Yuyin could no longer maintain the elegant smile on her face, and her face turned pale. She quickly stepped forward and said condescendingly, What time is it now? You're already rolling the red carpet? That's too much. I haven't left yet. The assistant translated her words for her. The man looked at her from head to toe and said expressionlessly, We're just following orders. The last couple has already walked the red carpet. Moreover, it's time. The banquet is about to begin. Call the person in charge here. I'll talk to him. Han Yuyin said coldly. The man muttered in Italian, then picked up the headset and called the person in charge. The person in charge hurried over. When he saw Han Yuyin, his face turned cold. What's going on? Han Yuyin snorted and pointed arrogantly at the assistants in charge of closing the red carpet. She said angrily, What are they doing? I haven't walked the red carpet yet, and they're already rolling it up. That's too much. Please give me an explanation. Her tone was arrogant and arrogant. Chapter 1493. The person in charge was surprised, and his tone was cold. Time's up, so they're starting to pack up the red carpet. There's nothing wrong with them doing that. Han Yuyin almost flew into a rage when she heard that. She tried hard to calm herself down and forced a smile, pretending to be calm. I haven't left yet. It was just a few words, but she said it while smiling and gritting her teeth. The person in charge asked coldly, What does that have to do with me? Han Yuyin was stunned. You didn't want to leave when I asked you to. Now that time's up, you won't have the chance to leave even if you want to. Wait for the next time. The person in charge said those words casually, but what he meant was that Han Yuyin should pack up and leave and walk the red carpet again next time. Han Yuyin's face was completely flushed. She was extremely embarrassed. She suddenly lost her composure and said unreasonably, No way. You can't do that. Roll out the red carpet for me again. Let me finish walking the red carpet. There's a limit to acting like a big shot. Who do you think you are? You're just an artist. Do you want everyone to wait for you? The person in charge rolled his eyes at her. Sorry, the banquet has started. I asked you to walk the red carpet, but you didn't want to. Who do you think you are? How dare you dream of being the finale after Mr. Mu? Ha! He sneered, turned around, and continued to order people to pack up the red carpet. Han Yuyin held onto her fur coat. Her eyes were red as she glared at them. She bit her red lips. She felt wronged, but there was nothing she could do. She could only watch as they packed up the red carpet and removed it. The reporters rushed into the venue and immediately erected a barrier. Now, she couldn't even enter the venue. Han Yuyin thought about the fashion banquet she had been looking forward to for so long. Now, she was blocked outside the door, standing alone in the cold wind. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She was full of grievances. She thought about how Yin Shishir walked the red carpet in glory, but she didn't even have the right to walk the red carpet. Just thinking about it made her heart ache. Her eyes turned red. No matter how hard she tried to hold it in, she couldn't stop her tears from flowing. Her assistant scolded her from the side. What kind of attitude is that? Seriously, our Yin hasn't even walked the red carpet yet, and she's already taken it away. She doesn't know how to respect others at all. It would have been better if she hadn't said anything. The moment she did, Han Yin felt even more aggrieved and had nowhere to vent. Her tears flowed even more violently. She couldn't help but say, "Shut up." After saying that, she went back to the car angrily. As soon as she got into the car, Han Yin broke down and burst into tears. There was nothing more miserable than rushing to Fashion Week, only to be blocked outside the door. At the same time, he felt so humiliated. She didn't know if her embarrassing moment had been captured by the domestic reporters. She thought about how the local reporters would write about her if they found out that because she had acted like a big shot, she had suffered a double loss and couldn't even attend the banquet. The more Han Yin thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt. She covered her face and cried. In the venue, famous people gathered and the stars shone brightly. Muyaja hugged Yin Shishir and took the wine glasses. The waiter poured red wine for them. He turned around and raised the wine glass, indicating to her. Yin Shishir glanced at him and smiled shyly. She mumbled, "I can't really drink. I'm afraid I'll get drunk." What's there to be afraid of? I'm here. Chapter 1494. Muyaja suddenly leaned close to her ear. Also, I like how you look when you're drunk. She was delicate and cute, and the two patches of red on her cheeks were especially charming. He loved this beautiful and charming appearance. Yin Shishir pursed her lips and pretended to pout coquettishly as she glared at him. Muyaja clinked his wine glass against hers and drank it in one gulp. He could hold his liquor very well. In the past, when negotiating business, the wine table was undoubtedly a smokeless battlefield. Alcohol tolerance symbolized the confidence of a negotiation. Often, the success of a transaction could not be separated from the boost of alcohol tolerance. Yin Shishir was still afraid of getting drunk, so she took a small sip. The wine-red wine stained her delicate lips, and it was incomparably beautiful. Muyaja glanced at it, and his heart was slightly moved. If they weren't in a public place, he really couldn't help but lower his head and lick the beautiful wine on her lips. The female celebrities present were all envious and jealous. They couldn't wait to kick Yin Shishir away. This Yin Shishir was too much of an eyesore. It wasn't just the domestic artistes. Some international celebrities were also a little jealous. Among them was Princess Charlotte of the Morocco royal family. As a member of the Morocco royal family, Princess Charlotte naturally received a VIP invitation to Milan Fashion Week. She didn't expect Muyaja to also come. She had met him once at the Morocco royal family's banquet. Under the arrangement of Duke Hanst, he danced with her. Charlotte thought that this man was quite interesting. During the dance, she could see that he was absent-minded and uninterested, as if he was very reluctant to dance with her. He made a few wrong steps and stepped on her a few times. Charlotte was displeased, but at the same time, he left a deep impression on her. There were very few men who didn't like her. As the princess of the Morocco royal family, not only was she rich, but she was also beautiful and had a noble temperament. There were countless nobles who flocked to her like a flock of ducks. not to mention those commoners. This was the first time she had seen a man with a cold face in front of her. There was no change in his expression, nor was there a trace of reverence or submission. After the dance, he left the dance floor in a hurry and did not linger. Charlotte could not help but be a little interested in him. This man is very interesting. Moreover, his noble and arrogant temperament was very attractive to her. She was tired of those men who fawned over her in every possible way. She was even more tired of those who treated her as if she was a high and mighty queen. Towards Muyaja's cold and arrogant temperament, she was very attracted to him. After that day, through Duke Hanst, she expressed her admiration for Muyaja to the Mu group, hoping to meet him. Charlotte's view on love was very straightforward. Western culture had been implanted in her bones since she was young. To her, in love, there was no such thing as who took the initiative or who was passive. If she liked someone, she would take the initiative to pursue him. Thus, she picked up a glass of red wine from the waiter's tray and walked towards Muyaja. Muyaja was standing in front of the dining table with Yun Shirshir in his arms, gently feeding her cake. Yun Shirshir said angrily, "I don't need you to feed me. You don't like me feeding you? There are so many people watching. It's not good. Don't worry about others." Muyaja did not allow her to say anything. The venue was divided into a VIP area and a non-VIP area. Chapter 1495. Hence, he felt that he had nothing to fear. However, Yin Shirshir could feel the sharp swords directed at her from all directions. So many pairs of eyes were staring at her with hatred. She felt uncomfortable all over. Muyaja ordered, "Open your mouth." Yin Shirshir was forced to open her mouth and was fed a mouthful of the tiramisu cake. It's so sweet. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. Muyaja saw that she seemed to like it very much and also took a bite. "Yes, it's very sweet." Qinzhou, who was watching from the side, covered his face. "Oh, please, what was going on with these two?" Sure. Could you at least learn from Linji?" After entering the VIP area, it was as if you were on a spiral motor, constantly traveling among the famous celebrities to make your presence known. Looking at these two, they did not look at anything else after entering the venue. They only focused on tasting the delicious food at the dining table. When Qinzhou saw Yun Shirshir holding the cake and savoring it, he was especially angry that she did not fight for it. He expected better from her. The Fashion Week Gala was a gathering of many international celebrities, including the royal family, political leaders, big-name buyers, A-list celebrities, and internationally renowned directors and producers. Any one of them had many dazzling titles, and they were all resources that could only be found by chance. However, Yin Shirshir seemed to be possessed. She only focused on the delicious food and did not pay attention to anything else. Qinzhou was so angry that he stomped his feet. Why was this child so thoughtless? But on second thought, forget it. Let her be. Although this child was a little silly, fortune favors fools. Although she did not know how to fight for resources, the person standing next to her was the best resource. Muyaja. If he said that he wanted to help Yin Shirshir rise to the top, Yin Shirshir would definitely be smashed by all kinds of big-name resources that would fall from the sky. Qinzhou snorted and decided to ignore her. Hence, he went all over the venue to look for Gu Xingze. He did not seem to have seen Gu Xingze since he walked on a red carpet. Could it be that he was too depressed and didn't come? 2 hours ago, Gu Xingze arrived at the Louis Vuitton studio with a bouquet of lilies in his hands. According to the agreement, Yin Shirshir was supposed to be his female companion on the red carpet, so he arrived as promised. Before that, he had specially bought a bouquet of flowers, intending to give her a surprise. He remembered that Shirshir liked flowers in his heart. However, when they arrived at the studio, Qinzhou was about to leave, but Yin Shirshir was nowhere to be seen. He smelled it, but Qinzhou stammered, saying that Yin Shirshir had already left. Gu Xingze felt a little strange. He asked, "Didn't we agree to walk the red carpet together tonight?" Qinzhou, however, hinted that Shirshir had been taken away by Muyaja. Tonight, she would be walking the red carpet with Muyaja. The moment he finished speaking, Gu Xingze's face darkened and his eyes turned gray. He looked very disappointed. Qinzhou was very worried. Gu Xingze asked expressionlessly, "When did Muyaja arrive?" I'm not sure. He took Sure away. Yes, Qin Zhou saw this and could not help but say, Xingze, give up. Gu Xingze looked up at him in confusion. Give up? I can tell that you like Sure a lot, right? Qin Zhou probed carefully, afraid that he would hurt him. Chapter 1496. Do you need to hide it in front of me? You clearly like her a lot, don't you? Qin Zhou's tone became a little harsh. Gu Xingze, however, was distraught. I've already said it. I didn't. If you didn't, would you have accepted the job for the love diary? Qin Zhou suddenly questioned him sternly. Gu Xingze was stunned. You accepted this job because you subconsciously wanted to use this reality show, even if it's fake or fictional, to be by Shure's side as her boyfriend, right? Qin Zhou was aggressive, but Gu Xingze remained silent and did not say a word. You don't have to lie to yourself anymore, okay? You're in love with Shure, so why don't you dare to admit it? But as a friend of many years, I can only advise you to give up. It's impossible between you and her. I can tell that Mu Yaja cares a lot about her, and he values her a lot. You have no chance at all. Gu Xingze still did not say a word. Qin Zhou was also furious. In fact, he had long seen through Xingze's subconscious feelings for Yin Shure. If it was in the past, Xingze would never have accepted a reality show like The Love Diary, let alone let any female celebrity consume his popularity. Although it was his idea to use Gu Xingze's fame to create hype, it was his idea. But Xingze was used to having his own principles. Qin Zhou watched that episode. Gu Xingze looked at Yin Shure with doting eyes. Even through the screen, Qin Zhou could deeply feel Gu Xingze's deep feelings for Yin Shure. Even if it was just a show, it would be good. Even if it was just a show, it would be good. To be able to date, hug, and hold hands with the person he loved as a couple. These wishes that could not be fulfilled in reality could be fulfilled in the show. This was probably the main reason why Xingze accepted this show. Think about what I've said. After saying this, Qin Zhou left him behind and left. However, until now, he still hadn't seen him. Could it be that this fellow didn't come? Qin Zhou was slightly annoyed. He seemed to have been too harsh with his words earlier. He was worried that he might have hurt him. However, if he didn't say that, he might not be able to clearly understand how ridiculous he was. Shure clearly did not belong to him. This relationship couldn't be forced. So why did he have to be so stubborn? Thinking of this, Qin Zhou left the venue and headed to the hotel where Gu Xingze was staying. Yin Shure stood in front of the dining table and felt that the food on the table was so sumptuous and tempting that it was too much for her eyes to take in. This one was delicious, and that one looked delicious as well. Yin Shure was drooling. She had not eaten dinner. Now was the time of famine. Greedy little cat. Mu Yaja looked at her greedy appearance and could not help but be cold. Seeing the cream on the corner of her mouth, he couldn't help but reach out to wipe it away. Miss Yin, please pay attention to your table manners. He teased her on purpose. Yin Shure snorted. What's there to be afraid of? As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly caught a glimpse of a graceful figure walking in her direction from the corner of her eye. An elegant woman in a gorgeous gown was holding a wine glass in one hand and looking behind her. Her exquisitely made-up face seemed to be full of ambition. Yin Shure was stunned and focused on her. However, she saw that she had already walked in front of her and stopped in her tracks. You. Yin Shure frowned in surprise and confusion. Chapter 1497. Lowly commoner, move aside. Her arrogant behavior had undoubtedly infuriated Yin Shure. She asked in return, Who are you? Do I know you? Who is this woman? Why is she so arrogant? They walked in front of her for no reason, and one by one, they arrogantly asked her to make way for them. Mu Yaja heard the commotion and turned around. He caught a glimpse of a gorgeous figure from the corner of his eye. He was slightly stunned and instantly frowned. What are you doing? She walked to Yin Shure's side and protected her in her arms. She glared at Charlot with a dignified expression. When Charlot saw Mu Yaja, the arrogant expression on her face instantly faded and was replaced by a light and charming smile. She went to his side and held his arm as if there was no one else around. She looked very intimate. Arthur, I've finally caught you this time, haven't I? It's me, Charlot. We even danced together some time ago. Do you remember me? Charlot said in fluent French. She smiled and rested her head on his shoulder intimately. Yin Shir was stunned. She was petrified and looked at the scene in front of her in disbelief. She looked up and glanced at Mu Yaja's gloomy face again. She finally understood what was going on. Her heart settled down. It turned out that another rotten peach blossom had appeared. She simply ignored it and left it to Mu Yaja to solve it himself. She turned around and continued to choose her favorite desserts. Mu Yaja could not help but feel frustrated. He wanted to push her away, but Charlot held on to him tightly and did not give him a chance to do so. It also seemed that she was doing this intentionally for Yin Shir to see. She wanted her to see how intimate she was with this man. However, when Charlot looked at Yin Shir smugly, she saw that she was holding the plate calmly and did not look over. She was calmly tasting the desserts. Charlot's face instantly darkened. This woman did not seem to care about her at all. Mu Yaja looked at her with a headache. This woman was the mess Mu Linfeng had thrown to him. Princess Charlotte was a member of Morocco's royal family. Princess Charlotte was the beloved daughter of Princess Caitlin of Morocco. Not only was she beautiful, but she was also very wealthy. As one of the future heirs of the royal family, there were countless admirers who flocked to him. The Mu family had many dealings with the Morocco royal family, so Mu Linfeng had high hopes for Mu Yaja and hoped that he could marry Princess Charlotte. Naturally, Mu Yaja was well aware of his uncle's thoughts. That was the reason why he had asked him to leave the country. Mu Yaja was filled with jealousy and dissatisfaction when he arranged for the princess to be with him. If the Mu group could form a marriage alliance with the Morocco royal family, the benefits would be unimaginable. It would be a great help to the Mu group. However, Mu Yaja was especially disdainful of this. What he hated the most was using marriage as a bargaining chip between business and politics. Moreover, since he already had a woman in his heart, he would not spare another glance at other women. Charlot could not help but feel disappointed when she saw his cold expression. She raised her goblet and gestured to him. "Arthur, let's have a drink, shall we?" "Not interested." Mu Yaja's tone was still indifferent. He pushed her away expressionlessly, appearing especially cold. Chapter 1498. She had always been confident and arrogant. She had countless fans, and the number of people who adored her was as many as the carps in the river. But she was unable to attract this man's gaze. This was a huge blow to her. She didn't believe it. She didn't believe that she couldn't conquer this man. Charlotte appeared in front of her in a flash and pouted coquettishly. "Hey, what do you mean he's not interested? Make yourself clear." She questioned angrily. Yin Shir took a sip of the red wine and glanced at Charlotte, reminding her kindly, "What he means is that he's not interested in having a drink with you." When Mu Yaja heard this, he was stunned and looked at her in shock. He thought that this woman would be like her usual self, hiding at one side like a coward and ignoring them. Or maybe she would start to let her imagination run wild and be overly suspicious. He didn't expect that she would be so daring to stand out and go against Charlotte. He couldn't help but be surprised at this. Charlotte's attention was attracted by her words. Yin Shir spoke in French with perfect pronunciation. Although she wasn't fluent, it was very standard and every word was enunciated accurately. Charlotte was a little surprised, but at the same time, she couldn't help but glare fiercely in her direction. She arrogantly scolded, "It's not your turn to butt in here. You lowly commoner, shut up." "Hey, you're wrongly accusing me." Yin Shir blinked her eyes innocently and guided her patiently. "I'm kindly reminding you, but you're actually scolding me as a lowly commoner." Charlotte didn't understand. "Kindly reminding me?" "Yes, because you don't understand human language, right? I'm kindly translating for you." Yin Shir smiled elegantly, but suddenly spat out a sentence that was disgusting to death. Charlotte immediately understood the mockery in her words and was instantly angered to the point of suffering internal injuries. Even Mu Yaja couldn't help but curl the corners of his lips. This woman was too cute. She was usually docile and quiet, obedient and sweet. But once she revealed her edge, she was like a cat with sharp claws and teeth. She could actually smile and say such vicious words. It seemed that he had learned a lot from following Qinzhou. Charlotte was furious. However, even if she was furious, she had to pay attention to her public image in a public place. She had no choice but to suppress the anger in her heart and try her best to maintain the noble and elegant expression on her face. She sneered disdainfully. "Shut up. You have no right to speak here. Get the hell away from him. You don't deserve to stand beside him. You're such an eyesore." Yin Sure, on the other hand, was neither shocked nor angry. With a light smile on her face, she said, "Your Highness, you seem to be mistaken about something. Would you please examine the situation you are in? This is Milan, Italy, not Monaco, okay? Now that we're in Italy, can you please put away that disgusting princess act?" Ew. Charlotte was rendered speechless. She could only stare at her with her thick eyeshadow, wishing she could kill her with her gaze. Yin Sure glanced at her and smiled. "Don't stare at me with your dead fish eyes. Damn lowly commoner. You." Charlotte was at a loss for words. She was so angry that she clenched her fists. Her meticulously done nails were almost embedded in her palms. She glared at her fiercely. "Okay, I won't play with you anymore." Chapter 1499. Charlotte was left standing at the same spot, glaring angrily at him. When they reached a corner, Muyaja could not help but tease her. "Little thing, I didn't expect you to have such a fierce mouth." As he spoke, he reached out and lightly scratched the bridge of her nose. "Who asked her to have such an arrogant attitude? Does she really think that I'm a pushover?" "Oomph." Yin Sure curled her lips coquettishly, and there was a hint of playfulness in her eyes. Muyaja could not help but feel a little curious. How did you know her identity? He had never mentioned Charlotte's identity in front of her. Yin Sure looked up and glanced at him. Then she said, firstly, from the way she spoke, she was so arrogant. Her every movement had a strong, aristocratic accent. It seems like she's either rich or noble. As for the second one, from the way she spoke French with a unique accent, so I guessed her identity. The official language of the Morocco royal family was French. Looking at her haughty, princess-like appearance, she vaguely guessed her identity. Carefully looking at her face, she remembered that she had seen her on TV before. When the Morocco royal family crowned Princess Charlotte, there were related reports in the country. She happened to see it. Muyaja smiled. "So you're not stupid." "Hey, I'm very smart, okay?" Yin Sure retorted. "When I was in school, I was at least a top student. Otherwise, how could you be so smart? Yu is so smart. Didn't he inherit my genes? Then why can't Xiao Yiqin solve a simple math problem? Because he inherited your stupidity." Yin Sure was choked by his words, but she was extremely disdainful of his words. She snorted coldly. "Mr. Mu, you seem to have overlooked a problem." "What?" "A child's innate genes are important, but their education is also very important. Look, Xiao Yiqin isn't proficient in his studies at all under your tutelage. Look at Yu. Look at how smart and adorable she is under my careful guidance." Yin Sure smugly glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. Obviously, he was determined to go against him. "You're full of crooked arguments," commented Muyaja bluntly. "What nonsense! This is clearly the truth, okay?" Yin Sure rebuked him. "I'm not going to argue with you." Muyaja curled his lips and smiled. He leaned down and whispered in her ear, "Were you jealous just now?" As soon as he finished speaking, Yin Sure's face suddenly turned red. When Muyaja saw this, the smile in his eyes deepened. She seemed to be a woman who got shy easily. He especially liked how she looked when she was shy. Her face would always turn red, and she would lower her head and frown slightly. Her coquettish face would look as if she wanted to say something. She would stare at him shyly and aggrievedly. She stared at a certain part of his heart. She stared at him until his body was slightly hot. He knew that his body was hot not because of the alcohol, but because deep within his body, he was reacting to her. Muyaja hugged her and suddenly confined her to the wall in a secluded corner. He placed his arms on her shoulders and looked down at her. "Answer me. Were you jealous just now?" When she was arguing with Charlotte, her tone was tough. There was a different sharpness about her that was on the verge of bursting out. Chapter 1500. Intentionally or unintentionally, she avoided this topic. She turned her face to one side. obviously avoiding his probing gaze. Even she didn't know why she had been so impulsive to argue with Charlotte just now. In fact, she couldn't afford to offend a noble like Charlotte. Alas, she could not bear to watch her entanglement with Muyaja in every possible way. She was disgusted. So there was that scene just now? Muyaja saw the fear in her eyes. He lowered his head a little unhappily and pecked the corner of her lips with a gentle bite, as if he was coercing her. Say it. His tone was domineering and irresistible. He was eager to hear the answer from her mouth. Between them, she had always maintained an ambiguous attitude and rarely expressed her feelings for him directly. Just now, she was the most domineering she had ever been. But it was for him. This knowledge made him feel complacent. This woman, who had always seemed to be weak and boneless, actually stretched out her sharp claws for him one day. This made him a little wild with joy. Yin Shirshir pushed him. Hey, you don't be like this. We're still at the venue. Answer my question. Muyaja was extremely willful and domineering. He didn't allow her to escape. Yin Shirshir lowered her face. At this ambiguous moment, the phone rang at the wrong time. The ringtone came from Muyaja. He seemed to be indifferent to the irritating ringtone. Instead, he was a little annoyed by this untimely disturbance. Yin Shirshir said, Your phone is ringing. Don't worry about it. Hey, at least care about it. What if it's something important? Yin Shirshir said seriously. Because of her, Muyaja picked up the phone with an unhappy expression. He glanced at the screen and saw that the call was from Mui Chen. His expression softened a little, and he picked up the phone. Hello, Daddy. This call, the little guy's voice was especially excited and loud. Daddy, I saw Mommy on TV. These words that came out of nowhere caused Muyaja to frown involuntarily. Television? And in Mila Fashion Week report. Mui Chen, you idiot. It's Milan Fashion Week, not Mila. Not far away. Yu's stern voice was heard correcting her. All right, it was Milan Fashion Week. Mommy is wearing such a beautiful dress. She's so beautiful, just like a fairy. Xiao Chen finished speaking excitedly. In an instant, his voice sounded strangely aggrieved. What a pity. I didn't see it with my own eyes. I can only watch Mommy on the TV. Muyaja, Yin Shirshir could vaguely hear Xiao Chen's voice, but she couldn't make out what Xiao Chen was saying. She stared wide-eyed at Muyaja's expression. Muyaja said, Little idiot, haven't you gone to bed yet? Daddy, you're the idiot. It's already noon here. Xiao Chen snorted. Muyaja broke out in cold sweat. He had forgotten that there was a time difference between Capital City and Milan. It was 9 o'clock in the evening in Milan and 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Capital City. Daddy, I miss Mommy so much. When is Mommy coming back? Mui Chen's weak voice came from the other end. It sounded inexplicably sad, as if he was about to cry. Chapter 1501. Alive. Muyaja couldn't help but feel disappointed by the little boy's choice of words. How could he describe it like that? The two little boys had indeed missed their mother dearly these few days. Yin Shirshir could still hear Mui Chen's heartbroken complaints through the phone. I miss Mommy so much. She heard these words clearly. Hearing Mui Chen's longing, Yin Shirshir's eyes reddened. Yin Shirshir had a few days of intense work. Once she was done with the recording of The Love Diary, she was dragged to the recording studio by her manager for a voiceover session. Just as she was done with the voiceover session, before she could even step into the house, she was dragged onto a private plane to Milan by her manager. She counted the days and realized that she hadn't seen the two little lads for about half a month. Yin Shirshir missed them dearly. She snatched the phone from Muyaja's hand. Xiao Chen. The moment she spoke, there was a moment of dead silence on the other end. Then, Xiao Chen's ecstatic voice came through. Mommy, Mommy. His voice was extremely loud and clear. The child's tender voice was filled with 4 years of experience. Yin Shirshir's eyes reddened. Xiao Chen, I'm so sorry. I haven't been able to tell you and you bedtime stories for the past few days. Mommy misses you so much, Xiao Chen asked softly. Mommy, when are you coming back? His helpless question hit the softest spot in Yin Shirshir's heart. Her heart tightened and she blurted out instinctively, I'll be back tomorrow. Just as she finished speaking, she suddenly remembered that there were a few shows tomorrow. Chinjo had repeatedly emphasized that these shows were very important and couldn't be missed. However, she was worried about the two little boys at home. She missed them dearly. She had no choice. The two little lads were much more important than work. Once he heard that Yun Shishir would be back tomorrow, Xiao Yiqin was overjoyed. He held the phone and jumped up and down excitedly. Awesome, awesome. Mommy, what time will you be home tomorrow? I haven't booked the plane ticket yet, so I don't know. Oh, I see. In an instant, Xiao Yiqin's tone turned gloomy. He was indescribably disappointed. Yun Shishir couldn't bear it and immediately said, I'll definitely rush back as soon as possible. Okay? Okay. Xiao Yiqin's voice was filled with vitality when he heard her promise. When Mommy isn't here, you must take good care of your little brother. Yun Shishir stared at her seriously. Little Yiqin hummed in acknowledgement before patting his chest in assurance. My dearest Mommy, don't worry. I took good care of you. Okay, be good. Stay at home and wait for Mommy to come back. All right. Xiao Yiqin promised again and again. After hanging up the phone, Yun Shishir's eyes were empty. She thought about how Chinjo would coldly reject her when she mentioned that she wanted to return home early. Just thinking about it gave her a headache. Is it too late to book the plane ticket now? There's no need to book the plane ticket. Yun Shishir looked at him in confusion. What do you mean? Muyaja said, I have a private jet. Yun Shishir was speechless. Muyaja said, we'll fly directly to the capital tomorrow. Yun Shishir suddenly blurted out a very popular teasing phrase on the internet. Tycoon, do you lack accessories on your thigh? Muyaja smiled evilly. He grabbed her chin and kissed her flirtatiously. No, I need someone to warm my bed. Yun Shishir was speechless. Chapter 1502. On the other side, Mu Yiqin hung up the phone and said to Yu proudly, Yu, Mommy is coming home tomorrow. Yu, who was standing at the side, glared at him resentfully, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Little Yiqin could not help shrinking his neck under his father's stare. Licking his lips, he fearfully asked, Why are you staring at me like that? What do you think? Yu crossed his arms and stared at him coldly. I'll take good care of my brother. Mu Yiqin, aren't you embarrassed to say that? Mu Yiqin blinked innocently as Yu stood in front of him and counted with his fingers expressionlessly. I washed your clothes, cooked your meals, told you bedtime stories every night, and woke you up. I made noodles for you in the middle of the night when you were hungry. Mu Yiqin, who's taking care of who? The more he spoke, the angrier he got. When his mother was not at home, he had to take on the role of a father and a mother at home. He wished he could have 3 heads and 6 arms to take care of Mu Yiqin. In the end, the lad was heartless. He turned around and asked for a reward from his mother. He even promised her that he would take good care of his younger brother. Who's taking care of who? Mu Yiqin felt guilty. He looked at him timidly and begged. Yu, brother was wrong. Don't be angry. Humph. Yu snorted coldly and put the laundry basket aside. He sat on the sofa angrily and crossed his arms. It was obvious that he was furious. Mu Yiqin went up to him in a fawning manner. Just as he was about to reach out to hold his brother's hand, the latter unceremoniously slapped his hand away and ignored him. Humph. Go away. Wasn't it too late to try to please him now? Yu, don't be angry. You don't look good when you're angry. Look at your face. It's wrinkled like an old man. Yu looks best when you're not angry. Mu Yiqin coaxed him. However, his words only added fuel to the fire. Like an old man? Yu glared at him and said proudly, You're the old man. Yu, don't be angry. Brother doesn't know how to talk. Yu was speechless. He was completely speechless at his stupid brother. Idiot. Idiot. He's so stupid. Yu crossed his arms and turned his head to the side in a fit of anger. These days, he was like a full-time nanny, taking care of his stupid brother. She didn't eat well, was picky about what she wore, was naughty, broke several vases, and even shamelessly asked for a reward from Mommy. Just thinking about it made him angry. Mu Yiqin sized him up carefully and said, Yu, don't be angry. Yu glanced at him coldly from the corner of his eyes. At this moment, the little lad was sitting on the sofa with his legs elegantly crossed and his arms crossed. His arrogant demeanor made him look like an elegant queen who was unapproachable. Mui-chin tentatively sat beside him and reached out to carefully massage his shoulders. You be good. You be good. Don't be angry anymore. Yu rolled his eyes in his heart. Was this idiot treating him like a 3-year-old child? However, Mui-chin's flattery was still effective. Yu suddenly said, "Be gentle." "Oh, okay." Mui-chin obeyed his orders obediently. He loosened his grip a little as he carefully massaged his son's shoulders and coaxed him sweetly. Yu's worked hard. Brother will massage your shoulders. Chapter 1503. While she was enjoying the massage, she also reminded him to control his strength from time to time. Xiao-Chin smiled apologetically and had a lot of fun massaging her. Yu, is it comfortable? It's just so. Yu commented coldly without even lifting her eyelids. Little Chin let out a defeated whimper and continued to work hard on the massage. Idiot, be gentler. Ear, be a little heavier. It's comfortable. Hee. Xiao-Chin smiled proudly. His silly face was extremely cute. Yu raised the corners of her eyes and glanced at him lazily from the corner of her eyes. She instructed, "You're done massaging. Go and dry the clothes." Xiao-Chin's face fell, and he nodded unwillingly. Then, he carried the laundry basket and walked to the balcony with a sad face. Yu's eyes curved into crescents. She snickered as she looked at Xiao-Chin's dejected back. A smug look appeared on her face. This guy can be quite cute sometimes. Qingzhou rushed to the hotel Gu Xingze was staying at and knocked on the door. No one responded for a long time. He raised his eyebrows suspiciously and returned to his room. Qingzhou's suite was right next to Gu Xingze's. He arranged for Yun Shishir to stay in the same hotel as Gu Xingze on this trip to Milan. At the same time, he prepared a room key for both of them just in case. When he returned to his room, he found a spare room key for Gu Xingze's room. He used the room key and successfully entered the room. However, what he saw was a dark room. He turned on the lights in the hall and closed the door. When he passed by the bathroom, he heard the sound of water flowing from the bathroom. He was shocked. He pushed open the unlocked door and rushed in. The sound of water came from the bathtub. He walked to the bathtub. There was no one in the bathtub, but it was filled with water. The shower head was not turned off, and water kept flowing. The water in the bathtub kept overflowing and covered the floor. As soon as he entered, his shoes became wet. Gu Xingze must have forgotten to turn off the shower head after showering. It seemed that he did not attend the banquet tonight and went straight back to the hotel. Qingzhou frowned and turned off the water. If he did not check in time, he did not know when to see if the water would come flooding. The time to check. He walked into the bedroom and saw to the balconies open. The bedroom was a large suite, and the balcony was an open-air observation deck surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows. The evening breeze poured in through the windows, making the curtains dance. The room was cold to the room. To the balcony, to the balcony, to the balcony. Gu Xingze, dressed in a black bathrobe, was leaning lazily on the sofa with his head lowered. In the darkness, she could not see his face clearly, but she could still feel the deep aura emanating from him. He seemed to be a little tired. Qingzhou's gaze fell on his hand. Between his fingers was a cigarette that was about to burn out. There was an ashtray on the low table next to him. The ashtray was full of cigarette butts. Qingzhou was stunned. In his impression, Gu Xingze seldom smoked. He was not addicted to smoking. He only smoked a few cigarettes to refresh himself when he stayed up late to memorize the script. However, it was rare for him to smoke so fiercely. Qingzhou's heart skipped a beat. Gu Xingze seemed to be lost in thought and did not notice his presence. Chapter 1504. Gu Xingze raised his hand and took another deep puff of the cigarette. However, this mouthful, perhaps because he inhaled too quickly, he choked fiercely. He suddenly covered his face and let out a heart-wrenching cough. Cough, cough, cough. It was heart-wrenching. Amidst his violent coughing, his fingers loosened and the cigarette fell on the carpet. The smell of burnt carpet instantly filled the air. Qingzhou frowned, quickly turned on the floor lamp, and walked over. Gu Xingze's wet hair was exposed under the light. He looked up in shock. When he saw Qingzhou, his eyes dimmed slightly. Qingzhou walked to his side and sat down. He looked at him angrily, only to see that his body was dripping wet. especially his hair. It was as if he had just been fished out of a bathtub. He was only wearing a bathrobe, and his hair was dripping wet. It was as if he hadn't wiped it, and the ends of his hair were still dripping with water. Qingzhou's heart ached when he saw this. How did this man in front of him become so decadent? In the past, Gu Xingze had always been high and mighty. He was cold, arrogant, and inviolable, like a king. He would never show such a weak side. Qingzhou could not help but feel heartbroken. At the same time, he could not understand. Xingze, how did you become like this? Ever since he terminated his contract with Gu Xingze and became Yun Shishi's manager, Gu Xingze did not hire another manager. He had his own studio. Everything in his acting career was managed by his team. Gu Xingze opened his eyes lazily and did not say a word. He grabbed the cigarette box on the table and put a cigarette in his mouth. He was about to light it. Qingzhou quickly snatched the cigarette from his mouth and said angrily, "How many cigarettes have you smoked? Why are you still smoking?" As he spoke, he glanced at the ashtray. The ashtray was full of cigarette butts. How many cigarettes had this guy smoked without saying a word? Qingzhou said angrily, "Your new album will start recording soon. Don't you want your voice anymore?" Gu Xingze said in a low voice, "Give it to me. Don't smoke anymore." Qingzhou ordered and confiscated the cigarette box. Gu Xingze watched his movements, but did not stop him too forcefully. He closed his eyes and let his body sink into the sofa, but his face was filled with unconcealable loneliness. Qingzhou sat down across from him and remained silent for a long time. After what seemed like a century of dead silence, Gu Xingze suddenly spoke slowly. "What should I do if I fall in love with someone I shouldn't?" Perhaps it was because of the cigarette, but his voice was a little hoarse and obscure. It was low and broken, revealing a little powerlessness and confusion. Qingzhou had never seen him so fragile. He moved his lips and took a deep look at Gu Xingze, but said almost cruelly, "Then don't love." Gu Xingze was confused. Qingzhou forced himself to say coldly and heartlessly, "Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't look at it. And don't have any wild hopes." Gu Xingze stopped talking and looked down expressionlessly. Qingzhou said coldly, "Cut off all the feelings you shouldn't have." "Cut off all the feelings?" Gu Xingze said indifferently, "If it's that simple, it's not a bad thing." Qingzhou was speechless. Gu Xingze said unwillingly, "But I want her." "Her? Is it sure?" Qingzhou held his forehead helplessly. "There are so many women you don't want." "Why her?" "Feeling." Gu Xingze uttered these two words after a long pause. Chapter 1505. However, Qingzhou was puzzled. He really couldn't understand why Xingze was so infatuated with Yun Shishi. "How do you feel?" Qingzhou asked. Xingze narrowed his eyes, as if he was smiling. "She gives me a warm feeling." "Warm?" "Living with her will definitely make you feel at home." Gu Xingze paused and said, "What I want, no one can give me except her. Don't let your imagination run wild. You'll meet someone more suitable." Qingzhou stood up and held his shoulders. He advised in a low voice, "Actually, Xingze, you deserve to meet someone more suitable. All this time, you've been too closed off and unwilling to come into contact with the outside world. You immersed yourself in work and numbed yourself. Actually, you can find someone more suitable for you." Gu Xingze frowned, but didn't say anything in the end. Qingzhou sighed. Not long after his debut, he started to manage Gu Xingze. Gu Xingze had been in the industry for 10 years. He had been in the industry for 11 years. In these 10 years, he couldn't tell if it was him who made Gu Xingze or Gu Xingze who made him. After taking care of him for 10 years, Qingzhou's heart ached for Xingze. When he first met Xingze, it was during a high-level meeting. Xingze entered the entertainment industry because he was once spotted by a talent scout on the streets of America. He was invited to the company and was coaxed into signing a contract. Strictly speaking, Qingzhou was his second manager. At that time, Qingzhou was just 20 years old. He was promoted from an assistant to a manager and was considered a greenhorn. When he first met Gu Xingze, his first impression was that the young man had an arrogant temperament. He sat at the table with a few executives surrounding him. They were all smiling and looking at him as if he was a money tree. However, he didn't say a word. His expression was cold, and there was no emotion in his eyes. At that time, the domestic entertainment industry wasn't at its peak. At that time, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japanese, and Korean idols were very popular. Gu Xingze was like a piece of high-quality jade. Even though he hadn't been carved, he was still natural. He was the kind of person who would be attracted by his handsome appearance at a glance. He had unlimited potential. However, it wasn't until he got to know him better that he understood that this youth's coldness seeped into his bones. He was the illegitimate son of the Gu family in the capital. He had the blood of the Gu family, but he was not acknowledged by the Gu family. When he was very young, he was exiled abroad and lived alone. The reason why Gu Xingze was exiled was because he was overseas and had nothing except for his expensive living expenses. There was no affection, no family, no friends. His mother had left him a long time ago. Therefore, it could be said that Gu Xingze had always been alone. Therefore, the first time they met, Qin Zhou saw a strong sense of loneliness and melancholy in his eyes, as well as a distant aura that was difficult to get close to. He was usually a man of few words. It was only when he was on stage that he forced a smile as if he was wearing a mask. She was blessed with exceptional beauty and was sought after by her fans. Her first album was a whirlwind, and she became famous overnight. Ever since his debut, Gu Xingze had been a rare, high-quality idol in the entertainment industry. He was immune to any rumors. The entertainment industry was a big dye vat. No matter who stepped into it, they would be tainted. The relationships between men and women in the circle were very messy. There are always these chaotic parties. Chapter 1506. The company, home, 2 points, 1 line. Other than that, he had to rush for work and fly all over the world. Yin Shishir was probably the only woman he cared about. Was it because Shishir gave him the feeling of home? Qin Zhou immediately understood. Yin Shishir did have a warm charm. She did not speak much, but when she smiled, she seemed to be able to give people endless strength. When he was with her, he felt very at ease, very steady, and very calm. Indeed, there was the warmth of a family. But this woman was the only one he could not touch no matter what. Xingze, you should be rational. Qin Zhou said earnestly. I also like Shishir a lot, but you have to remember that this is not a woman you should touch. Remember, this is not a woman you should touch. Gu Xingze closed his eyes deeply. Qin Zhou said to him, as if he was bewitching him, cut off these feelings that you should not have. Xingze, listen to my advice. Mu Yaja is not someone you can afford to offend. Even if Gu Xingze suddenly raised his voice and interrupted him. His handsome eyes suddenly opened, revealing a sense of ambition and desire that he had never had before. Even if I become the head of the Gu family? Qin Zhou was stunned, not understanding the meaning behind his words. Is it because of Mu Yaja's status as Firen? Or is it because the Mu family is so powerful that I, as an artist, cannot compete with them? Gu Xingze's tone suddenly became a little agitated. He suddenly leaned forward and grabbed Qin Zhou's collar tightly. Then, if I replace my brother and become the head of the Gu family, will this status be enough to compete with him? Qin Zhou quickly covered his mouth. Don't say such dangerous things. He paused and suddenly lowered his voice. Don't forget that the Gu family has assigned people to watch over you 24/7. What if the room is bugged and Gu Jinglian hears what you said? His voice stopped abruptly, but he didn't continue speaking. Gu Xingze's mouth was covered, but his face was calm, and there was no fear in his eyes. He just stared at him coldly. Qin Zhou's heart skipped a beat. Gu Xingze's bold words still echoed in his ears. If I become the head of the Gu family, will this identity be enough to go against him? Was he crazy? In order to snatch a woman from Mu Yaja, he didn't hesitate to compete with Gu Jinglian for the position of the head of the family. Was he crazy? Qin Zhou suddenly asked, how much do you love her? How much do you love that woman? Don't you care? She and Mu Yaja have 2 children. Gu Xingze remained silent. Qin Zhou continued, 7 years ago, the Mu family hired a girl with a clean background to be a surrogate mother for the Mu family and gave birth to 2 children. And I've already found out that this girl is Yin Shishir. You really don't mind? Why should I mind? Gu Xingze retorted coldly. Qin Zhou was stunned. I like her. I don't care about the past. Qin Zhou said, Yes, you don't care. You're with her, but what about the two children? Gu Xingze was silent for a while. Suddenly, he said very seriously, I will be a qualified father for them. Qin Zhou couldn't believe it. Are you crazy? Yes, I'm crazy. Chapter 1507. You're crazy. Qin Zhou widened his eyes in disbelief. Is she worth it? Is she worth it? Gu Xingze stared at him with determination. She's worth it. Qin Zhou was stunned and choked on his words. Gu Xingze clenched his fists. Under the moonlight, his handsome face looked determined. I want to give her the happiest life. He wanted to give Shir the happiest life, even if you have to sacrifice your life for her. Qin Zhou frowned with a complicated expression. Yes, it was a simple word, but there was no hesitation. Gu Xingze's eyes were unprecedentedly determined. In the past, he rarely took the initiative. Initially, he had hidden his feelings for Yun Shir deep in his heart because he did not want his feelings to burden her. If you love someone, you should not be conservative, but you should not bring trouble to that person. But now he did not think so, especially when he saw the scene on television where Mu Yaja held Yun Shir in his arms as they walked down the red carpet. He could not take it lying down. He was not willing to give in. He was not willing to give up the woman he loved to someone else. Gu Xingze walked to the rubbish bin and bent down slightly. He picked up the bouquet of lilies in the bin and held it in his hands. These were the flowers he had intended to give her. Qin Zhou stared at his proud back view. His expression was complicated, but there was also a trace of helplessness. He knew Xingze well. Once he was stubborn, he was hopeless. He could not help but worry for him. Xingze, have you thought it through? Gu Xingze's back was facing him. He said in a low voice, Yes, I want to get Shir back. Qin Zhou said, Have you ever thought that she doesn't love you? What will you do? Gu Xingze heard this and turned around. His lips curled into an enchanting smile. No, I will make her fall in love with me. After the banquet ended, Yin Shir searched the venue, but did not find Qin Zhou and Gu Xingze. She could not help but feel puzzled. At the same time, she felt a little empty in her heart. Why wasn't Gu Xingze at the banquet? She did not see him today. Could it be that he did not attend? Did something happen? She was actually a little worried. Originally, Gu Xingze had invited her to walk the red carpet with him, and she had agreed. But now that she had broken her promise, she could not help but feel a little guilty. When she dialed Qin Zhou's number, she couldn't get through either. Mu Yaja hugged her and asked, Who are you looking for? Yun Shir turned around, and the panic in her eyes disappeared. She immediately replied, I'm looking for Qin Zhou. Why are you looking for him? I'm checking on you. Yun Shir glanced at him. Why did it sound like an interrogation? Why? Can't I ask? Mu Yaja pretended to be unhappy and said, It's so late. You should be back at the hotel. Then he should have told me. I've already greeted him. What? Mu Yaja leaned close to her ear and said ambiguously, I told him that you are mine tonight. Hey! Yin Shir gritted her teeth. She was a little angry at him for spouting nonsense. She could not help but glare at him. Why did you say that? It will cause a misunderstanding. Mu Yaja suddenly lowered his head and gave her a fierce peck on the lips. There was a hint of displeasure in it. Misunderstanding what? Yin Shir was at a loss for words. The chauffeur arrived in the car. He hugged her and used one arm to stabilize her weight. He carried her into the car. As soon as they got into the car, he impatiently covered her lips again. Chapter 1508. Mu Yaja raised the partition, separating the driver's seat from the back seat. At the same time, he trapped her in his arms and kissed her passionately. In front of him, she was no match for him at all. She met his aggressive kiss with difficulty, but for a moment, she was so frightened by his ferocious strength that she did not know what to do. In just a short while, she was dizzy from his kiss and turned into a puddle of spring water in his arms. She was completely powerless to resist and was no match for his attack. As her consciousness drifted away, he hugged her and sat her in his arms. His long legs supported all of her weight as he hugged her back and continued this deep kiss. Yin Shir was so pitiful that she was in a daze from his kiss. She closed her eyes and felt that the man in front of her would have turned into a flood and mercilessly devoured her in the next second if they were not still in the car. This kiss was not enough for him to taste her beauty. He went so far as to put his hand under her skirt. Yin Shirshir was at a loss for words. Her face was as hot as blood. Don't. She lowered her voice and begged pitifully. Hearing her begging, Muyaja opened his handsome eyes and stopped her. What? Hey, we're still in the car. The more Yin Shirshir spoke, the redder her face became. You, don't be like this, don't what? Muyaja mischievously tempted her to continue speaking. Yin Shirshir's face was so red that she could not speak. She wanted to say that they were still in the car. Could he be a little more cautious and not be like a hungry wolf? Muyaja lifted her chin, and his gaze fell on her beautiful face with simple makeup. His fingertips gently rubbed those alluring lips. Originally, her lips were smeared with a layer of bright red lipstick. However, after a passionate kiss, the color of her lips had already faded and returned to their original pink color. However, it was such a natural cherry blossom pink color that it was extremely easy to arouse his desire to ruthlessly ravage her. Kiss me. His words were not to be defied. Yin Shirshir bit her lips hard, but she was too ashamed to obey his orders. Muyaja saw her hesitation, and his eyes burned with passion again. When Yin Shirshir saw this, she was afraid that he would go berserk, so she ignored everything else and held his handsome face with her small hands, clumsily pressing her lips against his. She carefully licked and kissed him, the tip of her tongue delicately tracing the shape of his lips. Her inexperienced kissing skills made him unable to be satisfied. Kissing like this, there was no way to enjoy himself to the fullest. What a stupid woman. She didn't know how to kiss at all. He bit her lips unhappily, causing her to cry out in surprise. However, in the end, he still managed to hold himself back. Muyaja fiercely restrained himself and allowed her to kiss him clumsily. Her small hands held his face and kissed him sincerely and seriously. He couldn't bear to interrupt her. Stupid woman. As he hugged her, he felt that every minute and every second that passed was an indescribable torture, especially when her exquisite figure was intimately snuggled up to him. It was torture in disguise. Muyaja gritted his teeth as fine sweat seeped out of his temples. The car arrived at the entrance of the hotel. Chapter 1509. Muyaja hugged her waist and said, "Get off the car." At this moment, Yin Shirshir's body was slightly limp. That lingering kiss earlier had almost suffocated her. Hence, when he hugged her waist, he quickly noticed that something was wrong with her body. Looking at her weak and boneless figure as she fell into his arms, Muyaja raised his eyebrows slightly, and there was a teasing and playful look in his eyes. Why, I can't walk anymore. No matter how one looked at it, the curve of his lips was playful and full of evil. Yin Shirshir couldn't help but feel annoyed, and at the same time, she hated this man's evil smile as she stared at him in annoyance, feeling extremely embarrassed. She tugged at his sleeve and stammered, My legs are a little numb." Muyaja curled his lips slightly, but there was an ambiguous flame in his eyes which landed on her face. So much so that Yin Shirshir felt even more embarrassed from his deep gaze. This man was too evil. She was so embarrassed, and wasn't the main culprit behind all of this because of him? Muyaja casually admired her embarrassment and didn't pull her or hug her. He just watched as she slowly got off the car, and with his long arms, he pulled her into his embrace. He couldn't help but kiss her earlobe as his heart was getting more and more anxious for her. However, he still forcefully endured it, and in his voice, there was a trace of unusual oppression and obscurity. "Little thing, is this all you've got in? You?" Yin Shirshir was even more embarrassed and angry as she raised her hand and hammered his chest. Muyaja didn't even bother to dodge as he allowed her to punch him. To him, this little fellow's fist strength was really insignificant, and it was just like scratching an itch. He stretched out his long arm and firmly supported her. His right arm exerted a little force, and her entire body was wrapped in his embrace. Compared to his 188 in body, She was just too petite. Adding on to the fact that she was skinny, with one hand holding her, it was as if he was holding a large cloth doll. She didn't see any strained expression on his face as he hugged her like this without any effort at all. Being hugged by him like this, she felt like a little child. Yun Shishir's face was full of charm, and when she raised her head to look at him, she could only see the side of his handsome face, which was incomparably handsome, and at the same time, it revealed a bone-deep arrogance. This man's strength had already reached a terrifying stage. Although she was skinny, she was still 48 kilograms, and he was able to steadily support her with one arm, which was really shocking. When Muyaja carried her into the hotel in such a strange way, the few waiters in the lobby were all stunned as they looked on helplessly. While they were shocked, they couldn't help but sigh at this man's astonishing arm strength. Some female staff were shocked, and at the same time, they also felt envious. Yin Shishir probably didn't know. However, when the others saw Muyaja lowered his head to look at her, that pair of doting eyes, just one look, and they felt that their hearts were about to melt. They stared at this scene without blinking. The man was incomparably handsome and well-dressed, while the woman was petite and delicate. Her delicate features revealed the charm of an Eastern classic. Chapter 15:10. No matter how one looked at it, the two of them looked so compatible, especially when Muyaja hugged the woman in his arms like she was a rag doll. Many people were envious and jealous. What was the happiest thing in a relationship? It was probably when a man doted on a woman like a princess and held her in the palm of his hand like a child. Yin Shishir received the strange looks that were cast at her. She couldn't help but gently tug at Muyaja's lapel and said in embarrassment, "Put me down. I can walk on my own now." She kept feeling that she was being hugged by him like a child. The staff in the hotel looked at her with surprise and envy, which made her feel very uncomfortable. She only felt that it was weird. Muyaja raised his eyebrows, but he didn't understand the awkwardness in her heart. "I'm not putting you down." He liked hugging her like this. He liked the feeling of her quietly nestling in his arms or fooling around. The elevator door opened, and he carried her into the elevator. He pressed the button for the floor. In the narrow space, there were only the two of them. Yin Shishir lowered her head and nestled in his chest. However, she could feel Muyaja's scorching gaze still on her body. It was incomparably hot. She only felt that her exposed skin was about to be burned deeply by this scorching gaze. The floor jumped over the 8th floor and headed toward the 15th floor. The suite he booked was on the 15th floor. When the elevator door opened, Muyaja carried her and walked towards a room. He took out his key card and swiped it to enter the room. Muyaja put her down and casually locked the door. Yin Shishir was wearing 8-centimeter high heels. When she landed, she was caught off guard. She lost her balance and almost fell. However, the man quickly grabbed her arm and helped her up easily. "Why are you so clumsy?" He didn't hide the teasing and ridicule in his words. When the sound of the door being locked was heard, Yin Shishir didn't even have time to react. She felt the man's warm palm push her. Then, that solid and tall body covered her. While she was still in a daze, her body was pressed against the door by him. When she felt the incredible heat coming from his body, she instantly turned pale. "Muyaja," she pushed him in embarrassment. How did this man turn from a well-dressed business tycoon into a wild beast the moment he entered the room? Along the way, she felt the scorching gaze in his eyes. Her heart was uneasy, but this man was too. They had just entered the door and were still at the entrance, but he seemed to be a little impatient. Muyaja pressed her down and lowered his head. No matter how elegant a man was, he wouldn't pretend to be a gentleman at this moment. He admitted that he couldn't wait to have her. Thus, he lowered his head and kissed her on the lips. His aggressive stance was completely on par with the ferocious strength from before. He didn't give her any room to resist at all, and he took her shock and anger into his mouth. In this aspect, men had always held the absolute initiative. No man liked to dilly-dally and oppress himself when it came to matters of the heart. He casually took off his suit jacket. He was like a teenager who had tasted forbidden fruit for the first time. He wanted to taste her. Chapter 15:11. Other than her, he had never touched any other woman. However, Out of so many women, he could not resist her. He could not get enough of kissing and tasting. On the way back to the hotel, and even on the way back while carrying her, he pretended to be calm and looked at her. However, in his mind, he had already thought of several angles and positions. He had even planned out what position he should change to tonight so that he could have her without restraint. In this world, it seemed that she was the only one who could fit him perfectly. Just thinking about it made it hard for him to control himself. However, she had a conservative personality, so he endured until the moment they entered the room. He could not control himself for one more second. Pressing down on her, he crazily pulled her into his embrace. He wished he could rub this tormenting little thing into his bones and blood. He wished the two of them could become one. Only then would he be able to extinguish the raging flames in his heart. Even though he did not leave her for a moment, he still missed the pleasure of devouring her body. However, this little thing's stamina was too weak. After kissing her a few times in the car, she was already in a daze. How could this be? To him, that little bit of kissing was just an appetizer. He was greedy and could not satisfy his hunger at all. However, this was all she could do. Yin Shih could only feel the world spinning around her. His kiss was ferocious. With his arms around her waist, he spun her around and brought her to the sofa in the living room. In the dark, he pressed her down on the sofa and tasted her sweet breath without restraint. So beautiful, so sweet. He could not taste enough of her sweetness. Yin Shih was a little afraid of him. The man in front of her was very different from the elegant gentleman at the banquet earlier. At the banquet, he was arrogant, elegant, and courteous. However, at this moment, the man in front of her was more like a ferocious beast that had accurately targeted its prey. His gaze was burning as if she would be eaten alive in the next second. Hey, stop for a moment. Yin Shih pushed his shoulders, forcing him to look at her. What's wrong? Let's take a shower first. Okay? She spoke softly as if she was begging him to be merciful. She wasn't ready yet. If he had been a little gentler, she wouldn't have been so frightened. But who was Muyaja? How could he be so easily dismissed? How could he not tell that she was just brushing him off? It seemed that this little woman still hadn't adapted to her style. However, if this kind of thing was suppressed, it would inevitably not be enough fun, especially at this moment, under the moonlight, the way she looked limp in his arms. Her cheeks were tender and rosy, like a delicate flower bud, bashful and waiting to bloom. It was as if he had fallen into a hopeless demon. How could he control himself? After this, I'll go wash up. After he finished speaking, he greedily kissed those lips that were as sweet as a peach, and he felt the flames in his body ignite. He stopped suppressing himself and possessed her. Yin Shih let out a muffled groan. She was frightened by his overbearing force. Her face was incomparably red as she bit her lips. However, she still could not help but let out a low, pleading sound. This man was too vile. Chapter 15:12. After a brief lull in the battle that lasted for an hour, the man buried his head in her neck and breathed freely. He felt incomparably refreshed after venting all of his desires. Yin Shih closed her eyes as her chest heaved up and down. She was so weak that she couldn't even lift her eyelids. The man's powerful and sexy panting kept ringing in her ears. Her small hands were on his shoulders, and her fingertips were slightly clenched. Muyaja raised his head to look at the woman in his arms. She was sweating profusely, and her clothes were sticky. After a battle, she was exhausted. Her expensive dress was torn into pieces by the man and thrown to the side mercilessly. Yin Shih nestled in his arms tiredly, but she couldn't muster any strength. Go take a shower, Muyaja said in a deep voice. However, he only said half of what he wanted to say. The second half was, continue after you're done. Yin Shih nodded in confusion. She looked at the man in front of her who had restrained his fierce aura and felt relieved. She was elated at the thought of being able to lie on a warm bed and rest after a comfortable bath. However, at this moment, she was like Little Red Riding Hood in a fairy tale. She didn't know that a big, hungry wolf was silently hiding his tail behind his back and not showing it to her. After all, how could a man who had been suppressed for so long be so easy to get rid of. Muyaja carried Yun Shirshir into the bathroom. The room he booked was a presidential suite. Just the bathroom alone was more than 20 square meters. The bathtub was big enough for 2 people to lie down in, and it was big enough for the 2 of them to have sex with each other. He turned on the shower and held her in his arms as he carefully massaged her thighs. Yun Shirshir blushed beyond reason. This man, how'd he know that her thighs were so sore at this moment? However, she couldn't help but admire Muyaja's attentiveness. Usually, after sex, he would pay attention to her movements when she got out of bed. He always felt that her thighs were a little uncomfortable and her walking posture was a little unnatural. He seriously looked up some information in this regard. Yun Shirshir could not help feeling satisfied. She nestled in his arms and allowed him to knead and pinch her as she fell into a sweet sleep. Just as the bathtub was filled with water, the doorbell suddenly rang. Muyaja raised his eyebrows suspiciously. He didn't want to pay attention to it, but the person outside the door saw that no one was paying attention and rang the doorbell even more impatiently. Yun Shirshir was awakened by the doorbell. She looked up and opened her eyes in confusion. Who's ringing the doorbell? I'll go take a look. Muyaja knitted his brows in displeasure. He got up, put on a bathrobe, tied it up, and walked out the door. He walked to the entrance, and as soon as he opened the door, he was stunned. He saw Lin Ji standing outside the door. When she saw him open the door, she couldn't help but blush. There was a hint of wanting to say something. Muyaja frowned slightly and sized her up. He saw that she was wearing silk pajamas that were almost transparent. She stood shyly outside the door with her head lowered and her hands clutching the hem of her skirt. She looked a little shy and timid. His gaze suddenly noticed something strange. He glanced at her chest and saw that her full chest didn't seem to be covered by the pajamas. Through the material of the pajamas, he could see everything inside. Chapter 15:13. Lin Ji had returned to the hotel early after the banquet. She was ambitious and had been preparing for tonight's event for a long time. When she saw Muyaja at Louis Vuitton studio, she was stunned. Muyaja was the biggest boss behind Huanyu. He held the largest share of Huanyu's shares and was the boss of Huanyu. He could also be said to be the emperor who controlled the entertainment industry. However, as the successor of Muyaja, he was used to keeping a low profile and rarely exposed himself to the limelight. Everyone thought that he would be an ordinary man. However, when Lin Ji saw this mysterious business tycoon with her own eyes, she was shocked. Oh my God, what a handsome and cool man. He completely shattered her original impression of this man. He was tall and slender, with an imposing aura. His handsome features were exquisite, and his perfect and elegant temperament crushed all the little fresh meats in the entertainment industry. He was so handsome. If he was in the entertainment industry, he would definitely gain countless fans. However, this man was a business tycoon, an elite of the empire. He held the vast Mu Empire in his hands and was incomparably honorable. A man like this, no matter what kind of woman, would flock to him like a flock of ducks. Was Muyaja Yun Shirshir's sugar daddy? Lin Ji could not help but be suspicious. After connecting the dots, she was certain of this idea. Muyaja must be Yun Shirshir's backer. Otherwise, how could Yun Shirshir get so many resources when she just debuted? Even if her manager was Qin Zhou, these resources were too generous. So many people could only dream of it. At first, she felt indignant. How could Yun Shirshir get to hook up with such a handsome, rich, and powerful sugar daddy like Muyaja? When she thought about it again, the first person she slept with when she debuted was an elderly investor. When she thought about it, she instantly felt that it was quite unfair. Therefore, Lin Ji made up her mind to snatch Muyaja, this big shot, from Yun Shirshir's hands. She hurried back to the hotel from the banquet. The hotel she was staying at was different from the one Muyaja was staying at. Lin Ji racked her brains and finally found out the hotel Muyaja was staying at. She packed her luggage and hurried over. Muyaja had already booked a luxurious suite downstairs from the presidential suite. She specially redid her makeup and deliberately imitated Yun Shirshir's makeup. It was clear and beautiful, light and delicate. Muyaja took a fancy to Yun Shirshir because he liked Yun Shirshi's aesthetic style. Pure, immature, and even like a young student. These days, the big bosses in the circle all like this kind of taste. Thus, Lin Ji imitated Yun Shirshi's dressing and took off all her clothes except for a silk nightgown. She stood in front of the mirror and looked at herself in the mirror. The silk nightgown was extremely light and thin. Under the light, one could easily see the outline of her body wrapped in the nightgown through the fabric. It was a little ambiguous. Lin Ji was very pleased with herself. She purposely dressed so sexy and flirtatious. She didn't believe that Muyaja wouldn't take the bait when she sent herself to his door like this. Lin Ji's ambition was huge. She fantasized about seducing Muyaja. After she took this man for herself, Yun Shirshir would be mercilessly kicked away. Chapter 15:14. At that time, all she had to do was think about how to get close to him, coax him, and make this sugar daddy happy. When the time came, she would be able to marry into a rich family in glory. That was the direction she should be working towards. There were so many female celebrities in the entertainment industry. How many of them entered the industry purely because of their passion for acting? Most of them used acting as a springboard to fame. Once they gained some fame, they would have the opportunity to enter the upper class and interact with the aristocrats. Marrying into a rich family was their ultimate goal. Lin Ji was no exception. Her family was not well off since she was young. Perhaps she was afraid of being poor, so she had a strong desire for material things and power. To her, in marriage, love was dispensable. Material things were the only thing that mattered. Therefore, marrying into a rich family was her greatest wish. When Lin Ji arrived, she was fantasizing that if her plan was successful and she could gain Muyaja's favor, it would be best if she could kick Yun Shirshir out of the picture. Then, she would be able to flaunt in front of Yun Shirshir. According to the rumors, only one of the gowns Yun Shirshir wore at the Fashion Week was provided by Louis Vuitton. No one knew where the rest came from. Could it be that she had bought them herself? They must have been given to her by Muyaja. Whether it was the ink-style gown or the Cheongsam gown that stole the limelight at the banquet, Muyaja had probably bought them at a high price for her to wear. What a generous gift. Muyaja was really generous when it came to her. Lin Ji's heart was filled with envy. In her heart, she yearned for Muyaja even more. If one day she could rise to the top, that would be amazing. The moment the door opened, Lin Ji saw Muyaja standing in the doorway. He was wearing a black bathrobe. It seemed that he had just come out of the bathroom. His entire body was dripping wet, and his hair was slightly messy and slanted. It covered his brows and left a deep shadow on his eyelids. Fine droplets of water dripped from the ends of his hair. It was obvious that he had just come out of the bathtub. Lin Ji's heart skipped a beat, and her face turned red. This was not an act. She was really mesmerized by Muyaja's handsome face. For a moment, she had completely forgotten the lines that she had prepared over and over again. She had forgotten how to open her mouth at that moment. She looked down and saw the man's slightly open chest. His chest was exposed to the air. His muscles were well-defined, and there were water droplets on them. His sexy muscles stretched all the way down. Damn it, he was so charming. Lin Ji lost control of herself for a moment. Her eyes were fixed on him, and she couldn't look away. Oh my God. Looking at this man up close, he was even more handsome than when she had first seen him from a few meters away. For the first time in her life, she was almost suffocated by a man's beauty. A man like this was definitely a godlike existence. Lin Ji was so mesmerized that she forgot how to be jealous of Yun Shirshir. She only wanted to take Muyaja down. She must have this man in her pocket. Even if she had to spend the rest of her life, she must tame him. Chapter 15:15. He blocked the door with his tall body, as if he had no intention of letting her pass. He knew very well what this woman's intentions were and what her goal was. As the big boss of Huanyu, he had met many women who overestimated themselves. They thought that they were beautiful and sent themselves to his door. In the past, he had to fly to other cities for business. Some investors saw the opportunity and even used unscrupulous means to send beauties to his bed. They were all carefully selected and were 1 in a million beauties. However, he was cold and indifferent. At that time, he was in the prime of his life, but he actually rejected these beauties who sent themselves to his door. There was once an investor who was so angry that he had internal bleeding. In order to cooperate with him, they specially selected an 18-year-old model from the young model circle. They stripped her naked and sent her to his bed, but he actually chased her out of the door. That young model was naked and sobbing outside the door. No matter how much she knocked on the door, he didn't move at all. How amazing! Linji obviously hadn't heard of these rumors. She thought that with Muyaja's young and vigorous age, she could successfully climb onto the dragon bed if she dressed up a little more charmingly and sexily. But was that possible? Muyaja was a normal man. He also had vigor and desire. However, this kind of desire could only be shown in front of one person. As for the rest, he simply ignored them to the end. Thus, when Lin Ji was full of anticipation, she saw his handsome brows slightly raised, and he said coldly, "What's the matter?" His handsome and cold face didn't have the slightest ripple. It was cold and indifferent, as if covered in ice and snow. Lin Ji was stunned. It was a completely different way of opening from what she had imagined. In her imagination, when she appeared dressed like this, shouldn't this man see through her motive at a glance and then pull her into the room? Was there something wrong with her? Lin Ji couldn't help but carefully reevaluate herself. There was nothing wrong with her. She even purposely pinched Yun Shishir's demeanor. Yun Shishir was just like her name. Her name was poetic and picturesque. She was also beautiful. If she had to be described, she was like the clouds in the mountain stream and the running water in the small spring. She had a unique style of the Jiangnan water village. Thus, Lin Ji deliberately followed Yun Shishir's template and put on the same makeup as Yun Shishir. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she actually looked similar to Yun Shishir. Muyaja must have taken a liking to Yun Shishir because he liked her temperament. Delicate and pretty, pure and beautiful. It was like a piece of flawless jade. Since that was the case, she would follow Yun Shishir's example and imitate her. However, from Muyaja's indifferent eyes, her meticulous plan seemed to have some flaws. Not being able to attract this man at first glance made her feel a little frustrated. However, Lin Ji wasn't discouraged. When it came to sending herself to the door, Lin Ji knew that she had to be thick-skinned. She couldn't care less about face and dignity. Even if she had to beg him on her knees, she had to beg him to take her. Thus, Lin Ji raised the hand that was originally behind her back. In the palm of her hand was a bowl. Chapter 15:16. Lin Ji held the bowl, her eyes curved into crescents as she asked timidly, "Mr. Mu, may I sit in your room for a while?" The moment she said that, coupled with the bowl, her intention was clear. Whether it was in the open or in the dark, it was a hint to Muyaja. A bowl, homophony one night. This was a clear indication that she wanted to sleep with him for a night. Sometimes the unspoken rules hidden in the unspoken language were just that wonderful. The entertainment industry loved literature and art. So much so that even the act of sleeping with someone could be done in such a stylish manner and be bestowed with such elegant sentiments. Muyaja frowned slightly. Before he could say anything, Lin Ji was afraid that he would reject her, so she immediately expressed her attitude. "Mr. Mu, don't worry. I'm very obedient, very obedient. I'm a very obedient woman. I won't do anything that makes you unhappy, and I won't play any tricks. I'll definitely follow your orders like an imperial edict. But please don't reject me, okay?" After a pause, Lin Ji moved greedily and cautiously a few steps closer to the door. Tonight, she had to enter this room. Even if she couldn't climb into his bed, it didn't matter. Entering this room would at least mean that she had succeeded. Not far from here, she had specially ordered someone to secretly take a video. Once she entered this room, they would make a screenshot. When the time came, even if she didn't succeed in hooking up with a big shot like Muyaja, she could still use these videos to create hype. Lin Ji had put a lot of thought into this and was very scheming. Muyaja asked coldly, "Who asked you to come?" Lin Ji was stunned. "There's no one. I wanted to accompany you of my own accord." "No need," Muyaja said decisively and was about to close the door. However, how could Lin Ji give up just like that? Seeing that Muyaja was about to close the door and shut her out, she made up her mind. She clenched her teeth and unexpectedly stretched out her leg, trying to use her own flesh and blood to block the door from closing. Muyaja didn't notice at all, and he didn't expect her to do that. The door closed, and her leg was pinched. Ah! With a stifled cry, Lin Ji's legs went limp, and she half knelt by the door. Muyaja turned around and realized what had happened. This woman actually used her leg to block the door from closing. So vicious and merciless? Most people were ruthless only because of their attitude towards others. This woman was so cruel to herself. While Muyaja was in a daze, Lin Ji took advantage of the moment he was distracted and limped in through the crack in the door. Even if he had to crawl into this room. Lin Ji crawled into the room and closed the door behind her. Muyaja was completely stunned by her unscrupulous methods. After a long while, he finally returned to his senses and let out a cold laugh. "Woman, you have some tricks up your sleeve." In order to enter his room, she had even resorted to the ruse of injuring herself to gain his confidence, using his own flesh and blood as the price. However, he had already seen many such shameless women and had long been used to it. Would these tricks work? He didn't like her at all. "Get out." Muyaja didn't give her any leeway and said coldly, "No." Chapter 15-17. "Just let me stay here tonight, okay? Let me serve you well. Don't worry, I'll definitely serve you well and satisfy you." As she spoke, Lin Ji actually took the initiative to kneel in front of him and reach out, want to touch him. Muyaja glanced at her from the corner of his eye and nimbly retreated, intending to avoid her at all costs. Lin Ji was instantly annoyed. How could she forget that Muyaja should like reserved and shy girls like Yin Shirshir? She actually forgot for a moment and revealed her true nature, impatiently wanting to pounce on him. He didn't like her like this. Thus, Lin Ji smiled and asked, "What do you like? Can I learn?" Muyaja was expressionless. Lin Ji continued, "If you like someone like Yin Shirshir, I can also become like her. What's your motive? You could just say it. Don't beat around the bush." Muyaja impatiently interrupted her. Lin Ji's eyes widened, but she heard his cold and clear voice like snow. "What's your motive? Just say it, and get lost after you're done." He could very well pick her up and kick her out of the door. But for some reason, seeing her face made him feel disgusted, and he didn't even want to touch her with a finger. He could clearly see that Lin Ji's timid and shy demeanor, like Lin Daiyu's, was deliberately imitating someone else. However, some people's temperaments were very unique. When it came to themselves, it was natural, and people couldn't help but want to protect and dote on them. However, if this temperament were to be imitated by others, it would only seem suspicious and pretentious, and especially disgusting. Yin Shirshir had a spiritual aura about her, but this spiritual aura couldn't be imitated. The hardest thing to imitate in a person was temperament. Lin Ji couldn't help but feel extremely embarrassed. She had never fallen into such a predicament before. In the past, when she delivered herself to the door, those rich men who saw her were clearly like hungry wolves who saw their prey. They couldn't wait to ferociously pin her down on the bed and devour her until she was skinned alive. But when it came to him, why did he get snubbed? Not to mention that she had been given the cold shoulder. She had shamelessly entered the room, but he had chased her away. She was really unwilling to accept this. Lin Ji felt extremely wronged. She blinked her eyes, and bean-sized tears rolled down her cheeks, dripping onto the expensive carpet under her feet. Why can't I?" Lin Ji suddenly raised her voice and stared at him with tears in her eyes. She looked extremely pitiful. "How am I inferior to her?" Lin Ji raised her voice. "I can serve you well. At the same time, I will be very obedient. If you say one, I won't say two." Before he could finish, Yin Shirshir's shocked voice suddenly came from the bathroom. "Muyaja?" Muyaja suddenly turned his head, only to hear Yin Shirshir's suspicious voice. "Who's in the living room?" Yin Shirshir was originally lying in the bathtub, leisurely taking a bath. She was exhausted from being tormented by him. Looking at her body, she was bitten by a vile man with bruises intertwined, as if she had been bitten by poisonous insects. The shower in the bathroom was still running, so at first, she couldn't hear the movement outside the door at all, until Lin Ji's grievances and cries alarmed her. Only then did she realize that there was someone else outside the door. Chapter 15:18. However, her brain was slow to react, and she couldn't remember who it was. However, she could tell that it was a woman. Yin Shishir was shocked and curious about what was going on outside the door. She could hear a hint of conflict in the woman's voice. Hence, she stood up and casually wiped her body. Then, she put on a bathrobe and walked out of the room. Muyaja, Yin Shishir called out softly again, but it sounded very natural. Lin Ji finally heard that the voice wasn't a hallucination. There was a woman in this room. This woman is so capable. She could call Muyaja by his full name. He was a big shot with high authority and was from a prestigious family. She didn't even dare to look him in the eye. Yet this woman could call him by his full name. She didn't have the time to figure out who this woman was. She could only curse silently. No wonder this man didn't want her to come in. It was no wonder that when she opened the door, she saw that he was wet. Her arrival had probably disturbed his good time. Alas, by the time she realized who the voice had come from, Yin Shishir's figure appeared in her line of sight. Yin Shishir walked into the living room and looked over. She saw Lin Ji half kneeling in front of Muyaja in an extremely awkward and embarrassed posture. In an instant, Yin Shishir's expression changed. She frowned and looked at Muyaja in confusion. Then, her gaze landed on Lin Ji's face. Her eyes were full of contempt. "Why are you here? Why are you here?" Almost at the same time, they spoke in unison. Lin Ji was shocked. In the next moment, her gaze locked onto Lin Ji. Yin Shishir was wearing a bathrobe. Because the belt of the bathrobe was tied very tightly, it wrapped around her entire body tightly. However, it was a bathrobe after all. The view on her neck couldn't be hidden no matter what. Therefore, Lin Ji could see the jade-like collarbones and fair skin on her neck at a glance. What was even more eye-catching were the incomparably ambiguous kiss marks. It was easy to imagine what had happened to her body just now. She was no longer the innocent girl who had just left school. He immediately understood what had happened in the living room just now, because even now, she could still smell the lingering charm in the living room. It was so ambiguous that it made her blush. This was a mark that would only be left after an intense love affair. Yin Shishir followed her line of sight and looked at her own body. She caught a glimpse of the incomparably eye-catching mark and immediately pulled it into her clothes to cover it up. Lin Ji finally understood that she had come at a bad time. What happened? Yin Shishir looked at Muyaja suspiciously, as if waiting for an explanation. Why was Lin Ji here? Most importantly, she was wearing such revealing clothes. Although her clothes were neatly worn, the texture was really thin. Under the illumination of the light, her body could be seen at a glance. Yin Shishir came to a sudden realization as well. She finally understood what the other's motive was. She was planning to seduce someone with her beauty. Muyaja glanced at her coldly from the corner of his eyes. Get lost. Chapter 15:19. Left with no other choice, Lin Ji could only tidy herself up, wipe her tears, and return home dejectedly. Only then did this farce come to an end. Yin Shishir furrowed her brows in apparent displeasure. How could a woman send herself to his doorstep, kneeling and begging for his favor? Why did these women treat him like a tyrant from ancient times? Most importantly, this woman was Lin Ji, an incomparably disgusting woman. Yin Shishir felt as disgusted as if she had swallowed a fly. It was as if a fishbone was stuck in her throat, and she instantly felt uncomfortable all over. Even though Muyaja didn't do anything substantial, Lin Ji's behavior had unintentionally made her uncomfortable. She was thoroughly disgusted by what she had seen. Yin Shishir clutched her chest. She was clearly infuriated. She wasn't angry at Muyaja, but she was deeply disgusted by Lin Ji's shamelessness. This was the first time she had seen it. Then, what about when she wasn't around? Did such things keep happening? Once she thought of the danger lurking around him, and the fact that so many women saw him as a god, chasing after him, and falling in love with him, Her possessiveness was incomparably shameful. She felt dirty. There was an expensive carpet at the entrance. When Lin Ji knelt, she instantly felt that it was an eyesore. Thinking of how Lin Ji looked just now, kneeling there in disgust, she couldn't stand it anymore. She walked over and threw the carpet out of the door in disgust like a child. Muyaja looked at her childish behavior, but he couldn't help but chuckle softly. He reached out and pulled her into his arms. However, he noticed that her body was extremely stiff. He knew that she was disgusted and even a little jealous. However, he still found it funny and asked knowingly, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Yin Shirshir gave a cold reply, as if she was a little peeved. Muyaja smiled faintly. He was a little glad that after Lin Ji's torment tonight, he finally saw that this woman could be quite cute when she was jealous. This was the first time he saw her so jealous. She was fuming with anger, her hands holding her lapels, and a hostile aura that kept people away, especially on that delicate and cute face. Her delicate lips were slightly pouted, and he couldn't help but want to kiss her. And he, too, had done the same. He grabbed her chin, leaned in, and kissed her lips. Yin Shirshir pushed him away a little angrily and questioned him a little unhappily. "Does this happen often?" Compared to her inexplicable anxiety, he seemed to be very patient and responded unhurriedly with a nonchalant attitude. Yin Shirshir was even more displeased. Do women like her often come knocking on your door in the past? This she was referring to was naturally Lin Ji. She wondered if there were many women like Lin Ji who had ulterior motives, coveting him. Were those women still sending themselves to his door dauntlessly, like a stream of carrots crossing the river, and begging for his favor? They were clearly in a civilized society of the 21st century, but these things that only happened in ancient times were really happening to her now. How laughable! There were actually women who trampled on him like this. He was happy to see her doubtful attitude. Chapter 15:20. Did this stupid woman finally have a sense of crisis? Did she finally understand that her man was also in high demand and that many women were eyeing him covetously? Finally, she was worried about this too. Muyaja was especially satisfied. However, he pretended to be natural and said, "A lot." His provocation was not intentional. Hence, Yin Shirshir did not detect anything unusual from his tone. She frowned and looked shocked. "A lot, yes." The man's lips curled into a smile as he retorted, "Isn't it normal?" Yin Shirshir was suddenly speechless. Yes, wasn't this a very normal thing? There were many such scenes in the entertainment industry. Lin Ji was one of them. Yin Bingqing, Han Yuyin, and the other A-listers had all done the same. Even Yang Mi, who got along with her peacefully, relied on the unspoken rules to get to her position. This was an indisputable fact. The entertainment industry was a luxurious circle. Beauties, money, power, and all kinds of darkness could find shelter here. Yin Shirshir's body stiffened when she thought of this. Muyaja said lazily, "There are many women in the entertainment industry. In order to get to the top, they send themselves to the rich man's room. What you don't know is that whenever I book a hotel, my hotel room number and all other information will be revealed in the next second. Then, many women will appear at my door, dressed in all kinds of flirtatious and seductive clothes." Yin Shirshir asked relentlessly, "What about you? Do you open the door and let them in?" "No." Muyaja was very calm about this. "No." Yin Shirshir was clearly skeptical of his claim. Then what exactly was the situation just now? Muyaja said, "In the past, I didn't like to interact with women in the industry. I thought they were dirty and disgusting. Those bodies looked beautiful, but under those beautiful faces, there was greed and lust. I didn't like it." "What about Lin Ji?" Yin Shirshir obviously did not want to let go of this point. "Why did you let her in?" Muyaja frowned. He was indeed wronged on this point. Was he the one who let this woman in? "I closed the door. Then she used her leg to block it." Yin Shirshir was shocked again. There was such a thing. This was too much. How could she be so shameless? She was rejected and still shamelessly came to him. How thick-skinned. Yin Shirshir uttered these words with a frown. Muyaja teased, "Do you think everyone is as thin-skinned as you?" Yin Shirshir She stared at him helplessly. Okay, be good. My little fella is jealous. Muyaja patted her head and coaxed her gently, as if coaxing a child. Don't be angry, okay? You won't look good when you're angry. Yin Shir completely lost her temper. I'm not in a mood to quarrel with you. She turned her face away. Obviously, she was still sulking. It was true that she could not blame him for this matter. However, she was still very angry and had nowhere to vent her anger. She kept it in her heart and did not know how to release it. She could not blame him, but she did not want to bother with him either. However, Muyaja found it funny. This woman, once she started to feel awkward, she really couldn't be coaxed with just a few words. Chapter 1521. The feeling of being jealous was surprisingly good. It felt really good. At least, it felt like she was being cared for. Muyaja was in a good mood. Hence, he reached out and clasped her shoulders, turning her body around to face him. There was a satisfied playfulness in his eyes. Are you jealous? His voice was low and deep, with a hint of devilish magnetism. Just like the rich and mellow red wine, it was enough to intoxicate anyone who heard it. Even Yin Shir couldn't help but be stunned by his deep and magnetic voice for a few seconds. When she came back to her senses, she still kept her lips tightly shut and didn't make a sound. Muyaja's gaze fell on her face. It was a little charming, a little cute, and a little twisted, but it made him faintly feel more excited. He lowered his head and precisely captured her breath, gently sucking on those tender and moist lips. Yin Shir couldn't help but push him. Hey, Muyaja didn't have the time to care about her struggle. She exerted more strength in her hand and pushed him away a little. I'm still angry. In other words, she wasn't in the mood to do these things at the moment. Why? He frowned slightly, feeling slightly displeased by her rejection. He didn't like her rejection. However, he could tell that she was still conflicted. Yin Shir looked up and stared at him seriously. I don't want this to happen again. She didn't want to see any woman clinging onto him and not letting him go. She didn't even want to see such a ridiculous thing happening in a hotel. She didn't like it and didn't want to see it again. She would feel disgusted, and at the same time, she would feel repulsed for a long time. Repulsed because she was extremely insecure. She was afraid of losing him. This feeling of insecure was not good, and it was very unpleasant. Muyaja stared at her, but didn't say anything for a moment. He kept quiet. In the silence, Yin Shir was originally waiting for his response. However, when she didn't get a response, she looked up uneasily and saw that he was also staring at her deeply without blinking, as if he was deep in thought. What happened? Yin Shir pursed her lips. Is my request too much? You should admit that you're jealous. Muyaja suddenly curled his lips and nodded. He leaned closer to her face and looked into her eyes. He touched her nose and said, You're jealous of me. Yin Shir was startled. She knew in her heart that she was indeed jealous. This was undeniable. However, she was reserved and shy. For a moment, she was too embarrassed to admit it. Thus, she said, I just don't like, she stuttered, as clumsy as a helpless child, not knowing how to express the bitterness in her heart. I don't like this feeling. Muyaja patiently waited for her to express herself. Yin Shir looked up and said, I don't know, the feeling of being coveted by others. This feeling is so annoying. You can't belong to others. She incoherently spat out every word. Every word was like squeezing toothpaste out her mouth. Muyaja restrained his gaze and smiled. His handsome eyes were hidden in the shadow of his hair. Hence, at that moment, she didn't see that hidden playfulness in his eyes. Chapter 1522. In the end, Yin Shir mustered up all her courage and clenched her fists tightly. Using all her might, she said, You belong to me. You belong to me. You belong to me and me alone. Do you understand? Yin Shir looked up at him. The unspoken words in her heart seemed to be silently questioning him. Muyaja's heart skipped a beat. His gaze froze as he stared at her in a daze. He did not expect that he would be waiting for this sentence. Yin Shir helplessly tugged at the cuffs of his bathrobe. This small action was more like a silent act of coquettishness. Her tone softened instantly. With a hint of helplessness, she asked, "You belong to me, right?" He had said it before. He belonged to her and her alone. He would promise her a world. He would promise her the whole world. Muyaja was stunned for a long time. Suddenly, he laughed involuntarily. Grabbing her chin, he narrowed his eyes slightly. Like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, he lightly pecked her little mouth that wanted to say something. "Yes, you're right." His broad and warm palm cupped her face. Her face was so small that he did not dare to use any strength when he held her face. He was afraid that he would accidentally hurt her. He pressed his lips against hers, unwilling to leave. Opening his handsome eyes slightly, his pupils were filled with endless charm. They were so dark that they shone brightly. It was as if countless stars were hidden within them, embellished with sparkling starlight. He was so close to her that their eyelashes were intimately intertwined. His eyelashes were so long that even his eyes brushed past her eyelids, leaving behind traces of itchiness. He really loved this torturous little thing. Muyaja pressed the tip of her nose and hugged her waist even tighter. At the same time, he blocked her lips and said, "Listen." Yun Sure looked up and gazed into the depths of his eyes. "I belong to you and you alone." He said each word with a pause. Every word was said with incomparable seriousness. "Do you like this answer?" Yun Sure was taken aback. It was as if a certain part of her heart had been struck hard, causing her to go limp. Muyaja smiled, but before she could respond, he kissed her. However, this kiss was not as domineering and fierce as it had been at the beginning. Instead, it was soft and gentle as it rubbed against her lips. Hugging her waist, he continued the unending kiss. The seductive kiss went all the way from the entryway to the living room, where they lingered on the sofa. This kiss was no longer limited to the sofa. Pressing his lips against hers, Muyaja's kisses gradually deepened and deepened. At the same time he pried open her lips, his hands also moved. With a few moves, he smoothly untied the knot on her waist. Her knot was very tight, but to him, it took only a few seconds for her clothes to be pushed aside. Yun Sure was kissed until she felt like she was about to suffocate. It was rare that he gave her space to breathe. In just a moment, he sealed her lips again and kissed her deeply. She raised her hands and hugged his neck. It was rare for her to take the initiative to pull his bathrobe down to his shoulders, revealing his well-defined shoulders. Muyaja could not help but tease her. "Little one, in such a hurry?" After he said that, Yun Sure was extremely embarrassed. Her face suddenly turned red as she stopped her actions and wanted to withdraw her hands. Chapter 1523. Muyaja's overly flirtatious words really made people blush and their hearts race. In front of others, he always gave people the impression that he was pure and ascetic, and he wasn't that enthusiastic about such things between men and women. Therefore, in the wealthy families, many young ladies from prestigious families flocked to him like ducks. It wasn't because of anything else. It was because other aristocratic young masters like him often had messy relationships with men and women. However, there had never been any rumors about him having a messy relationship. This was already considered extreme among the wealthy families. But in reality, there wasn't a man who wasn't passionate about such things in bed, and there wasn't a man who really said that he was pure and ascetic. This matter also depended on the partner. In other words, even if Linji tried her best to strip off all her clothes and stood in front of him flirtatiously, he might not even bat an eyelid. However, even at this moment, the woman in his arms stood in front of him fully clothed. Without doing anything, just one look was enough to make him have the urge to take her ruthlessly. He was a man who was full of energy, and he could maintain it for a long time at a time. After the two of them finished their session on the sofa, Yun Sure was so tired that she couldn't stop panting. Looking at the man, he frowned and didn't feel that he was satisfied. This place was too small. There were many actions that he couldn't perform at all. In such a small battlefield, there was no place for him to use his skills. Thus, he hugged her, carried the woman who was panting, and strode into the bedroom. He threw her on the bed. Her petite body bounced slightly on the huge king-size bed. Then, his tall body covered her in a dark mass and took advantage of her. Almost coherently, he merged with her again and continued what he hadn't been able to enjoy just now. At this moment, he was worn down by her to the point that he didn't have any rationality at all. This little thing, damn it, was so beautiful. He was especially greedy for the warmth in her body, and he couldn't bear to come out again. Accompanied by her intermittent moans, it made his blood boil even more. No matter what, he didn't know how to be satisfied. He couldn't wait to give it to her like this. I can't. No, I can't. Yin Shirshir gripped the bedsheet tightly and almost cried. She begged, Muyajai, I'm dying. Her absurd pleas for mercy almost caused a certain man who had been cultivating to break his cultivation when he heard her words. He held back his laughter, leaned over, and seductively bit her ear, but said in an incomparably domineering manner, I won't let you die. You. Yin Shirshir didn't even have the strength to glare at him. Ridiculous. It was too absurd. It was not until the wee hours of the morning, when she begged him in every possible way, that he was willing to give up. The absurdity that she had suppressed for so long was finally released. She couldn't bear to let it end just like that. Yun Shirshir was tormented by him to the point that her bones were about to fall apart. She begged for mercy again and again, but it was useless. This man, who seemed to have inexhaustible energy, did not listen to her at all. Even when she was exhausted, he still used those shy postures to torment her and provoke her. It was too vile. This man was simply a monster. It was as if he had inexhaustible energy. Chapter 1524. Sure. His voice was so soft that it seeped into her bones. Muyaja leaned close to her ear. His eyes were slightly open, and his thin lips were close to her ear as he murmured. He lovingly stroked her hair. He especially liked the look on her face at this moment. She was languid, intoxicated, and extremely enchanting. He had never thought that he would be so infatuated with a woman. Infatuated, immersed, and unable to control his emotions. All along, he had been proud of his strong self-control. He wouldn't be infatuated with things that he shouldn't be infatuated with. He could pick them up and let them go easily. However, now he had a concern in his heart. At the same time, he was a little annoyed, but at the same time, he was conflicted and satisfied. Men were sometimes contradictory. They longed for freedom, but they were also greedy for warmth. Yin Shirshir snuggled in his arms. In the warm room, they wandered charmingly. She hugged him and fell asleep very quickly. She was too tired. She was exhausted. After the carefree and unrestrained feeling, exhaustion hit her like a wave. Muyaja carried her into the bathroom and helped her freshen up. Under the light, he saw the marks on her body that looked like she had been bitten by poisonous insects. The bruises intersected with each other, and there was no doubt that these were his masterpieces. Vaguely, there was an inexplicable sense of accomplishment. A man's pursuit should be this desire to conquer. When Yin Shirshir woke up, it was already noon the next day. When she opened her eyes, she heard the sound of newspapers being flipped. In the quiet room, it was a little abrupt. Yin Shirshir turned her head and saw Muyaja sitting in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in the bedroom. He was actually leisurely flipping through the newspapers. She was about to sit up, but the moment she moved, she felt as if her body was falling apart. She couldn't help but frown and let out a long oh. It didn't matter if she didn't move, but when she moved, there were a few strange cracking sounds coming from her waist. Yin Shirshir was really worried that her bones were really falling apart. Her movements alerted the man who was reading a newspaper by the window. Muyaja turned his eyes and looked at her. Against the light, the afternoon sun in Milan poured down on his body and dyed his hair a warm color. He's awake? His voice was clear and seductive, and he sounded leisurely. Yun Shirshir was a little embarrassed as she replied, She hid under the blanket and shyly curled into a ball. The moment she lifted the blanket, she inadvertently glanced at her body. The marks all over her body made her so embarrassed that she no longer had the courage to get out of bed. Like a coward, she shrunk back into the blanket. Muyaja couldn't help but smile at her adorable reaction. He got up and walked to the bedside. He sat down and reached out to grab a corner of the blanket, wanted to lift it. No! Yin Shirshir struggled for a moment and clutched the blanket tightly. She looked at her as if she wanted to say something. Muyaja couldn't help but laugh. Which part of your body have I not seen before? Although she said that, she still felt that it was so damn embarrassing. Her body was covered with those marks. It was so embarrassing. Yin Shirshir wanted to cry to death. Muyaja tugged at the blanket, but she refused to let go. She accidentally pulled her waist and instantly scrunched up her little face in discomfort. It was so sore and painful. Muyaja saw that her expression was a little strange. He frowned a little worriedly and asked, "What's wrong?" Yin Shirshir shook her head. "What's wrong?" Chapter 1525. Muyaja didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Turn over and lie on your stomach on the bed." She let out an as she didn't understand why he said that. "Be good, lie on your stomach." He guided her gently and patiently. Alas, she was still on her guard against him, as if he were a wolf. She glared at him as if she was afraid that he would pounce on her the next second, just like he did last night. Her vigilant gaze made him not know whether to laugh or cry. "Why are you so guarded? Since when?" Although Yin Shirshir didn't admit it, the vigilance in her eyes couldn't be concealed. Muyaja said faintly, "You don't have to be so guarded against me. Firstly, I just want to give you a massage now. Secondly, I want you, so there's no use for you to guard against me." Since he had already said so, Yin Shirshir didn't dare to go against him. Hence, she obediently turned over and lay on her stomach on the bed. Muyaja opened the drawer. There was a box of rose essential oil that the hotel had prepared. He applied some on his hands and started to massage her. His technique wasn't considered professional, but it was just right to relieve some of the soreness. His broad palms rubbed the acupuncture points on her waist gently. She had never seen such a patient side of him serving someone. The man who had always been noble and imposing actually knew how to give someone a massage. If it was someone else, they wouldn't even dare to believe it. But Yin Shirshir had the fortune to taste the feeling of being served by this man. At the same time as she felt comfortable, she also felt a little smug. This man really knew how to be considerate sometimes. After about half an hour, the soreness finally subsided a little. Yin Shirshir let out a long sigh of contentment as her eyebrows slowly relaxed. She rolled into the bed and hugged the soft blanket. She stretched her waist again before she let out a long sigh of contentment. Comfortable, Muyaja patted her smooth little butt lightly. "Stupid woman, be careful not to catch a cold." The doorbell rang. Muyaja got up and opened the door. Two people from the fashion store and the underwear store came in with exquisite packaging. "Chairman Mu, hello. Sorry to disturb you." Muyaja nodded and gestured for them to put the clothes on the sofa. It turned out that he had woken up a long time ago. After tidying himself up, he called someone to send his clothes over. Yin Shirshir didn't have a change of clothes, and the only dress she had was torn by him. She didn't care about it at that time, so she didn't know about this bad news for a while. If she knew that Muyaja had casually tore the 8-figure dress he had given her into pieces and threw it into the trash can like garbage, she would definitely cry from anger. It was not that he did not cherish that dress, but at some point in time, a man pursued a desire to conquer. At the same time, he did not want her to wear this dress again. Too enchanting, too eye-catching. When she wore this dress, no matter how it covered it, it made her look exceptionally sexy and beautiful. She was his treasure. This kind of beauty was not allowed to be coveted by others. When he sent the clothes into the bedroom, Yin Shirshir saw the exquisite packaging in his hands and was a little confused. "This is new clothes." Muyaja put it on the bed. "It's already ironed. Just wear it directly." Chapter 1526. At this moment, she couldn't help but be amazed by this man's magical powers. He had actually grasped her measurements so accurately. Be it her bust, waist, or hips, there was not a single mistake. It was perfect. The style of the clothes was also good. The fabric was tight and covered all the marks on her body. Otherwise, she really wouldn't know how to face others. Especially her neck, which was full of love bites, could be seen at a glance. Oh my God, what exactly did he do to her body? Yin Shirshir felt angry and amused at the same time. Muyaja ordered someone to deliver breakfast or lunch. After Yin Shirshir ate, she suggested that they go shopping. Since they were already there, they should buy some souvenirs before leaving. There's nothing to shop in Milan. Muyaja didn't have any good suggestions. Milan was a paradise for shopping maniacs, but there wasn't anything special about it. The flight had already been arranged. Yin Shishir decided to return home early. Hence, she made a call to Qin Zhou to inform him. "You're returning home today?" As expected, Qin Zhou was obviously very angry when he heard that she was returning home early. "There are a few more special shows coming up. If you don't stay and perform well, why are you rushing back now? Why don't you go to heaven?" Yin Shishir said aggrievedly. "I saw that I was on the headlines. I'm already satisfied." Qin Zhou was speechless. Yin Shishir said pitifully, "Chairman Qin, let me go back home. I'm so tired. I want to have a good rest. There are still a few more scenes to shoot. I need to conserve my energy so that I can handle those high-intensity scenes." Qin Zhou then said mercifully, "Forget it. You go back home first. If you don't want to appear in the airport show, then so be it." Okay. On the way to the airport, they passed by a fashion plaza in the center of the bustling city. On the huge electronic screen, there was a report about the fashion banquet last night. She and Muyaja were there. Yin Shishir looked at the image of her, and Muyaja holding hands, and the corners of her lips curled up involuntarily. On Weibo, there were endless reports about Fashion Week. Many media websites had created special reports about Fashion Week. However, because it was Muyaja's first official appearance in front of the media, there was no doubt that she used Muyaja's presence to jump onto the headlines like a rocket. For a long time, the public had many speculations about the mysterious young CEO of Mu Group. Finally, at the Milan Fashion Gala, the mysterious crown prince finally unveiled his mysterious veil. His handsome appearance and elegant temperament immediately attracted the attention of countless people. Muyaja's appearance was undoubtedly breathtaking. So much so that the limelight suddenly overshadowed all the A-list big shots in the country who had rushed to the fashion show, firmly occupying the first place of the hot search. Soon, the netizens on Weibo gave him the title of National Prince Charming. "Oh my God, the CEO of Mu Group is so handsome. His handsomeness is on a whole new level. Oh my God, I'm going to abandon my Xingzhe and follow this CEO. He can obviously make a living with his face, but he has to rely on his talent. I heard that this young and mysterious CEO is worth hundreds of millions." Chapter 1527. The Mu Group plays an important role in the country's economy. It's like the heart of the country. He's rich, handsome, rich, and good-looking. He's practically God's favorite. Oh my God, he's so handsome. The CEO of the Mu Group is so handsome. I've decided that I want to bear his children. Yu Yu was sitting in front of the computer when she read the netizen's comment. She almost spat out a mouthful of milk on the computer screen. She tried her best to hold it in, but choked on the milk and coughed violently. She was dreaming. How dare she covet her daddy? She even said that she wanted to bear daddy's children. Was that even possible? Yu Yu logged into her account. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she typed a few lines of words. "Arthur, do you think you can sleep with him? Auntie, let me kindly remind you that it's daytime now. Go to the supermarket and buy a pillow. It'll be faster for you to dream." A few seconds after he replied, the netizen retorted angrily. "Who are you? I want to sleep with my idol. What does that have to do with you? You're such a busybody." Yu Yu frowned and sneered. She replied, "Muyaja is my daddy. Of course, I have the right to say that." "Oomph. Andy, just give up. My daddy is already taken." After she finished typing, Yu Yu leaned against the back of her chair elegantly. She looked relaxed and relaxed. Less than 10 seconds later, the netizen replied, "I think you're the one who's dreaming, right? You even said that he's your daddy. Who are you? Where did this primary school student come from? Puffed. You're crazy. Muyaja is your daddy. Who would believe that?" Yu Yu raised her eyebrows, but did not reply. She turned off her computer and walked to the French windows. She was in a good mood. Seeing mommy and daddy appear in front of the public together, seeing them holding hands, this feeling was really good. It turned out that happiness was not a difficult thing after all. After Yin Shishir returned to China, she hurried home. When Yu Yu found out that his mother had returned to the country, he personally cooked a sumptuous feast. His culinary skills were getting better by the day. Compared to his past culinary skills, his culinary skills were obviously on another level. Yin Shishir only tasted one bite of the pork belly he made, and she felt so happy that she could fly to the sky. Oh my God, it was too delicious. No matter how delicious the food was, it couldn't compare to her son's cooking. While Yin Shishir was crazily cramming, she felt that she was simply too blessed. Not only did she have an obedient and adorable son, but this son also had superb culinary skills. Her stomach was completely captivated. She was viciously jealous of her future daughter-in-law as she tasted the chicken soup that Yu had personally brewed. Tears were about to fall from her eyes. Yu sat at the side and exchanged glances with Muyaja and Muichin. A row of black lines appeared on their foreheads. Mommy, Yin Shishir looked up at him. What's wrong, my precious son? Yu looked at her with disdain and was a little speechless. Did you really come back from Milan Fashion Week? Of course. Before Yin Shishir could finish her sentence, Yu frowned and said disdainfully, but looking at the way you eat, you look like you escaped from a refugee camp in Africa. Yin Shishir was quite upset. She instantly felt as if thousands of arrows had pierced her heart. She complained in an aggrieved manner. You have such a sharp tongue. The truth always hurts. Chapter 1528. Muichin couldn't hold it in any longer and spat out a mouthful of chicken soup onto the table. Muyaja's lips twitched violently. He glanced at the petrified and hurt woman and said, Good son, I thought you would be used to it by now. Yu snorted and said, I am used to it, but the way you eat is too ugly. Muichin gritted his teeth and held back his laughter. He carefully looked back and forth between Yu and Yin Shishir. Yin Shishir tried to explain herself. I'm hungry. Also, Yu's cooking is so delicious that Mommy can't control my hunger. You don't care about your image when you're hungry? Yu raised his eyebrows and said disapprovingly, Mommy, how many times have I told you? You have to be ladylike and elegant. Yin Shishir explained, Mommy has always been very elegant and has maintained a ladylike image. After she said that, she didn't forget to blissfully wink at him. Yu clutched his chest and said, Then Mommy should be considerate of Yu's feelings. The way you eat is too scary. Yin Shishir almost exploded from Yu's sharp tongue. This child was getting more and more sharp-tongued. How scary was the way she ate. Yin Shishir felt hurt and said sadly, Yu, please don't be so mean. Mommy will pay attention to her table manners. That's more like it. Good Mommy. After he said that, he added, Eat slowly. Otherwise, it won't be easy to digest. The soup is still warm. If you drink it too quickly, it will burn your throat. Yu's chicken soup was very good. There was a layer of oil on the surface, so Yin Shishir accidentally scalded the tip of her tongue. Yu stood up and used a spoon to scoop away the hot oil. He then scooped a new bowl of chicken soup for Yin Shishir and placed it in front of her. Then he rested his chin on his hands and looked at her with a doting smile. Mommy, try it. Yin Shishir carefully blew on it and took a sip. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. It's delicious. Yu then scooped a bowl for Muyaja and Muichin. Muyaja also took a sip and raised a brow. Although he did not express anything, the incredulity in his eyes showed that he was amazed by the taste of this bowl of soup. Yu didn't ask him how it tasted. He was very confident in his cooking skills. He spent a lot of effort on this bowl of chicken soup and tasted it personally. He didn't add any flavorings, but it was still very delicious. Judging from Daddy's expression, he was also amazed by this bowl of chicken soup. Little Chin, on the other hand, was drinking without a word. Although his face was expressionless, he was still smacking his lips in satisfaction after gulping down the entire bowl of soup. It was obvious that he was not satisfied yet. Yu, when you get married in the future, will you still be willing to make chicken soup for Mommy? Yin Shishir suddenly asked pitifully. When she thought about how happy Yu's future wife would be, Yin Shishir finally understood why there were so many grudges between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. When she thought about it, she actually felt a little sad. Yu replied matter-of-factly, Of course. Yu will take care of Mommy's chicken soup for the rest of my life. Yin Shishir was very touched. At the same time, she was also touched by Yu Yu's cute and witty reply. So cute. Let mommy kiss you. Chapter 1529. After returning to China, Yin Shishir rested peacefully for a few days. She made up for all the sleep she had missed while rushing to work. However, this peace only lasted for a few days. As soon as Qin Zhou rushed back to China, a lot of work came crashing down on him. After returning from Milan, each artist team began to show their prowess and churn out press releases in full swing. Especially Lin Ji's team, they exaggerated the grand occasion of Lin Ji's red carpet appearance to the heavens. It was as if a fairy had descended to the earth and stunned everyone. However, no matter how much they exaggerated, the photos were just placed there. It didn't give people the impression that she was stunning. The main reason was that after Qin Zhou's team displayed Yin Shishir's live photos, it gave people the impression that Lin Ji's style was overshadowed. Without comparison, there would be no harm. This sentence was the absolute truth when it came to this matter. This infuriated Lin Ji's team, especially Lin Ji. Her face turned ashen when she saw the stark contrast between how the netizens were belittling her and Yin Shishir. She couldn't stand the sharp eyes of the public. Lin Ji had always boasted of being the #1 beauty in ancient costumes, but she couldn't stand being compared to Yin Shishir. Her temperament was clearly defeated. Oof. This Qin Zhou is really something. As soon as he returned to China, he couldn't wait to start a bloodbath. He wanted to praise Yin Shishir to the heavens. However, wasn't it just bragging? It only took a short while for Qin Zhou's team to be smug. After the popularity of Fashion Week, who would pay attention to Yin Shishir? This time, however, Lin Ji was once again taken aback. Within a few days, Louis Vuitton's official Weibo posted a group photo that shocked the entire entertainment industry. It was a group photo of Louis Vuitton CEO in Greater China, Han Donghua, Louis Vuitton's brand director, Shi Andy, and Yin Shishir. The three of them sat together, smiling at the camera. When the official Weibo posted this group photo, it only included a handshake and a heart-shaped emoji. No other information was revealed. However, this photo set off an uproar in the fashion industry. Han Donghua, the CEO of Louis Vuitton's Greater China region and the CEO of the Greater China region, it could be said that his status was incomparably noble. He had never taken a photo with any female celebrities in the country and was a relatively low-key person. As for Louis Vuitton's brand director, Shi Andy, he was one of Louis Vuitton's top executives who held great power behind the scenes. They rarely exposed their tracks to the public. Louis Vuitton's official Weibo published this group photo, which made people's imagination run wild. At that time, Louis Vuitton's official Weibo also published a photo of Gu Xingze and the two men. After that, Gu Xingze signed a contract with Louis Vuitton and became the brand ambassador of Louis Vuitton in Greater China. The outside world couldn't help but speculate. Could it be that Yin Shishir got Louis Vuitton's resources and became the new brand ambassador of Louis Vuitton in Greater China? If that was really the case, then this was a top-notch resource. At least, in the country, no female celebrity could get such a resource. Not long after, Yin Shishir Studios Weibo posted a group photo of Yin Shishir and Han Donghua enjoying dinner together. The two of them sat together, smiling, and had a tacit understanding. Chapter 1530. Half a month later, this guess was finally verified. Yin Shishir's personal Weibo published a series of large posts and announced that she would be LV's brand ambassador. Once the news came out, it caused a huge commotion, especially Lin Ji. She was so angry that her teeth were about to break. In fact, during this trip to Milan, Qin Zhou had met up with Han Donghua to discuss this matter. He and Han Donghua were old friends and had a good relationship. Coincidentally, Louis Vuitton was looking for an ambassador to expand the Chinese market. Hence, during this Milan Fashion Week, Qin Zhou strongly recommended Yin Shishir to Han Donghua. At first, Han Donghua was a little hesitant. After all, Yin Shishir had just debuted not long ago. Whether it was fame or popularity, it was still very limited. However, on the red carpet, Yin Shishir's noble and elegant Oriental classical aura conquered him instantly. Han Donghua was an American-born Chinese. Although he grew up overseas, he was very obsessed with Oriental classical culture. Yuan Shirshi's mysterious and elegant classical aura attracted him instantly. Han Donghua mentioned this matter to Shi Andy and also mentioned Yuan Shirshi to Shi Andy, expressing his admiration for Yuan Shirshi. Shi Andy also approved of Yuan Shirshi. However, before this, Han Yuyan's team had already contacted him and expressed their intention to work together. Louis Vuitton's headquarters also leaned towards Han Yuyan's idea of a new ambassador. After all, compared to Han Yuyan, who had debuted many years ago, Yuan Shirshi had just debuted and was lacking in many aspects. However, on the night of the fashion banquet, when Yuan Shirshi appeared with Mu Yaja in a Cheongsam gown, Shi Andy immediately changed his mind and decided on Yuan Shirshi as LV's ambassador for China. This was because beside Yuan Shirshi stood Mu Yaja. Just the name Mu Yaja alone was enough to convince her. This was capital. Putting aside capital, she was more outstanding than Han Yuyan. While being outstanding, they also had a lot of resources. Thus, Han Yuyan was mercilessly squeezed out. When Han Yuyan heard the news, she was so angry that she flew back to China on the same day. She was depressed for a few days and still hadn't recovered from the shock. It was too cruel. Her team had worked hard for a long time to get this resource. In the end, she actually lost to a newbie like Yuan Shirshi. What a disgrace. However, this was nothing. Han Yuyan heard that Yuan Shirshi had signed an 8-figure contract with Louis Vuitton. She was so angry that she almost vomited blood. 8 digits. An endorsement worth tens of millions. On what basis? For a big brand like Louis Vuitton, even if she was a diva, her contract would only be 8 figures. Yuan Shirshi, a newcomer who just debuted, actually signed a contract worth 8 figures. When Gu Xingzi signed a contract with Louis Vuitton, it was only 7 figures. When Han Yuyan's team first approached Louis Vuitton, they even stated that if they could sign an endorsement deal with Louis Vuitton, they wouldn't mind paying the signing fee. Yuan Shirshi actually signed an 8-figure contract. Han Yuyan felt extremely unbalanced. Lin Ji also felt the same way. When she found out that Yuan Shirshi had signed a contract with a sky-high price, she was so angry that she cried on the spot. She couldn't help but curse viciously in her heart. How did Yuan Shirshi get this contract? Unspoken rules? Chapter 1531. At the thought of this, she had nowhere to vent the bitterness in her heart. This news alarmed Song Inya as well. Some time ago, she went overseas to relax. When she returned, she learned of this news. She had always been more concerned about the fashion industry. As a socialite, she was very particular about big brands. She was also keen on international brands like Louis Vuitton and Chanel. When she browsed Weibo and learned of this news, she was also a little shocked. Yuan Shirshi actually signed with Louis Vuitton? Brother Mu must have helped her get the resources, right? Otherwise, how could a newcomer who had just debuted get such a top fashion resource like Louis Vuitton? In the past few days, after she returned, she discovered that there seemed to be a huge change in the Mu family. There was a huge upheaval in the Mu group. Mu Yinjue had passed away from an illness. The 4th son of the Mu family, a core figure with a high position in the family. Not only that, Song Inya also noticed that Mu Wanru seemed to have disappeared. The Muse announced to the public that Mu Yaja and Mu Wanru had broken off their engagement. Song Inya did not know whether to be happy or worried about this news. She was happy that since Mu Yaja and Mu Wanru had broken off their engagement, did that mean that she had another chance? However, she was worried that even if Brother Mu and Mu Wanru had broken off their engagement, so what? Yuan Shirshi, this stumbling block, had not been dealt with yet. At the thought of Yuan Shirshi, Song Inya felt that this woman was really detestable. Why was Brother Mu still not tired of her? She thought that Brother Mu would have long gotten tired of Yuan Shirshi. However, when she returned to the country, she saw Yuan Shirshi's face that made her want to strangle her to death. She was extremely disgusted. She still remembered the smug look on that *TCH's face when she personally went to apologize to Yuan Shirshi for Brother Mu's sake. Song Inya felt as disgusted as if she had swallowed a fly alive. In her eyes, Yun Shur was a lowly commoner, while she was a high and mighty noble lady. She actually wanted her to lower her head and apologize to this lowly commoner. However, for the sake of elder brother Mu, she could endure this anger. For the sake of elder brother Mu, she gritted her teeth and endured this grievance. The problem was that this lowly commoner actually did not accept her apology and even accused her of being insincere. Song Inya was so angry that she wanted to tear her into pieces. As a high and mighty noble lady, as the daughter of a socialite and the mayor's daughter, it was already a great favor for her to bend down and apologize to her. Not only did she not Shur, but she was also insulting her. However, this lowly commoner had Brother Mu's support and love. She couldn't do anything to her for the time being. This was what infuriated her the most. This was simply unbearable. Song Inya could not do anything to her, so she went abroad to relax. When she returned, she found out that Brother Mu and Mu Wanru had broken off their engagement. However, not long after this news was spread, Song Yunchi brought back a shocking piece of news. Inya, do you know? Mu Wanru has gone crazy. When Song Inya heard this shocking news from Song Yunchi, she was dumbfounded. For a moment, she could not digest this shocking news. What? Mu Wanru has gone crazy? Chapter 1532. Song Inya came back to her senses and pestered Song Yunchi. That can't be right. Brother, you're lying. Why would I lie to you? Song Inya looked at him with her hands behind her back and still had some doubts. Maybe you're joking with me? Song Yunchi sat on the sofa, lit a cigarette, and took a deep puff. Seeing Song Inya pestering him with a suspicious expression, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Do I have nothing better to do? Why would I joke with you like this? Then, how did you know? Song Inya still did not believe him, but she compromised and wanted to find out more about the situation from him. Do you want to know? At this moment, Song Yunchi deliberately kept her in suspense. He snorted and crossed his arms over his chest. I've been tired all day. If you want to know the answer, hurry up and massage my shoulders. Song Inya pouted, but she could not stop him. She stood up, walked behind him, and began to massage his shoulders. While Song Yunchi was feeling satisfied, he opened his mouth and recounted the entire incident. There was a provincial mental hospital in the capital. It was very large and had a lot of medical resources. Mentioning this matter was mainly due to a coincidence. Because of an unspeakable matter, Song Yunchi needed to go to this hospital to sign something. This thing was a mental illness report. Song Yunchi's friend had gotten into an accident. As for what happened, Song Yunchi did not tell Song Inya. One of his friends was sued in court. He was young and frivolous, so something happened to him. If he went to court, the situation would be very disadvantageous for him. However, if there was a mental illness report, this matter might be much easier to handle. Hence, he asked his father to find Song Yunchi and told him the purpose of his visit. He asked him to get such a thing for him. At first, Song Yunchi was unwilling. However, this friend of his was a more reasonable person. He gave him a special letter. Song Yunchi opened it and read it before agreeing to this matter. Therefore, he spent the entire day on this matter. When Song Yunchi arrived at the hospital, he wandered around the hospital out of boredom while waiting for the report to be issued. However, it was quite a coincidence. He had accidentally bumped into Mu Wanru. There was a very remote courtyard in the hospital. There were artificial mountains and flowing water. The environment and facilities were extremely beautiful. While he was wandering around, he saw a nurse twisting a female patient's neck and dragging her by the collar to the fountain. Without saying a word, the nurse pressed the female patient's head into the fountain. Song Yunchi was not surprised. In a mental hospital, such things were not unfamiliar. In fact, they were very common. There were many severely mentally ill patients in the mental hospital. When they acted up, they didn't recognize their relatives and went crazy. As a result, the doctors and nurses in the hospital were injured by them. Some of the nurses were good-tempered. They knew that it was because of their illness, so they didn't pursue the matter. However, some of the nurses were petty. If they were scratched or bitten by a patient, They would pull the patient to the side and punch and kick them until their faces were bruised and swollen. They would secretly torture them. Some of the patients' family members came from powerful backgrounds. The nurses would take very thin needles and stab them fiercely to vent their anger. Chapter 1533. Song Yunchi stopped and saw the nurse pressing the female patient's head into the spring pool. While pinching her body, she cursed, "Crazy, stupid, crazy woman. Who told you to scratch me? Who told you to bite me? Drown you! Drown you!" The female patient struggled crazily. Her movements were very big, and the water splashed everywhere. Song Yunchi frowned slightly. She walked forward and grabbed the nurse's arm. "What are you doing?" "Ah." The nurse was shocked. She turned around and saw an unfamiliar man in a suit and leather shoes. He was dressed respectfully. She immediately stopped her movements and looked at him in fear. The crime was caught red-handed. The nurse was a little helpless and explained incoherently that, "Sir, I'm sorry to let you see such a scene. I didn't want to, but this patient is so fierce. When she's ill, she scratches and bites like a lunatic. I had no choice but to teach her a lesson." As she spoke, she rolled up her sleeves and showed him, "Look, these are all scratches and bites from her. Sir, you'd better stay away from her, lest she hurt you." The nurse was still excitedly defending herself. The abused female patient at the side fell to the side of the spring pool and lay on the pool platform. Her wet hair covered her body in a sorry state. At this moment, she was relieved and was bending over, coughing violently. Song Yunchi frowned. When the female patient raised her head while coughing, she felt that her face was a little familiar. Sending permission, quickly stepped forward and grabbed her by the collar, forcing her to raise her head. However, after her hair was scattered, a familiar face was revealed. Mu Wanru. How could it be her? Song Yunchi was completely dumbfounded. The reason why she did not recognize her at first glance was that Mu Wanru was haggard and in a sorry state. Her face was sallow and thin, and her cheeks were sunken in. All kinds of scars were exposed on her skin. Her eyes were empty and lifeless, like a puppet without a soul. She looked unfamiliar. How could it be her? Why was she here? Song Yunchi was surprised and in disbelief. She asked the nurse next to her, "What's the patient's name? Sir, do you know her? Answer me." Song Yunchi didn't have much patience. Her face was gloomy and serious. The nurse stammered. When she was admitted to the hospital, her name wasn't registered. However, when this patient was ill, she often said a name. "Whose name? What's her name?" "Yin Sure. It's the same name as that popular celebrity recently. So I remember it very clearly." Upon hearing this, Song Yunchi's eyes darkened. He turned around and looked at her. With a suspicious gaze, he probed, "Mu Wanru." As soon as he called out this name, she seemed to have some reaction to this name and turned her gaze towards him. "You? How do you know my name?" Mu Wanru was like a young and childish child. She laughed crazily a few times, pointed at him, and then pointed at herself. You know me?" Song Yunchi turned pale with fright. His suspicions were confirmed. This person was Mu Wanru. But why was she here? This was a mental hospital, a place where mental patients were locked up. Chapter 1534. Why are you here? As soon as Song Yunchi finished speaking, Mu Wanru suddenly saw a nurse walking toward her from the side. She immediately panicked and hid behind Song Yunchi. She pointed at the nurse and wailed, "Devil! You devil! You're the devil who killed my child! Don't come over! Get lost! Get lost!" She screamed crazily and hid behind Song Yunchi. Her eyes were wide open as if she had seen a ghost. Song Yunchi's face was filled with embarrassment. The nurse had a helpless expression on her face. She called the security department and said that the patient had sneaked out. Even when the security department escorted Mu Wanru back to the ward, Song Yunchi was still in a daze. Later, she found out from the hospital director that the patient had gone crazy due to excessive stimulation. She also suffered from a very strong paranoia, and her mental state was extremely unstable. She was sent here by a mysterious person. When she was sent here, the person did not give any information about the patient and only asked the hospital to take her in. At the same time, as a condition, This person built a medical building for the hospital. Only then did the hospital director happily accept the patient. Song Yunshi knew that the hospital director was deliberately hiding it from her. She guessed that Mu Wanru must have been sent by the Muse and asked the hospital to hide her identity. Mu Wanru had gone crazy. Out of humanitarian reasons, the Muse sent her to a mental hospital and gave her a decent place to stay. However, Mu Wanru's identity was special. The Muse repeatedly asked the hospital to strictly protect all information and forbade it from being revealed to anyone. After Song Yunshi received the test report, she did not stay in the hospital for long. Song Inya still felt that the whole thing was quite mysterious. How could a perfectly fine person go crazy for no reason? After Song Yunshi finished speaking, she could not help but sigh. Inya, who didn't see that scene? When I saw Mu Wanru in the past, she was noble and magnanimous. She had the temperament of a lady from a wealthy family. When I saw her today, she no longer looked dignified. Her hair was disheveled, and she was crazy, just like a beggar. I don't know what happened, but she really went crazy. I guess there's no hope. She can only spend the rest of her life in the hospital. Song Inya was still in a daze. I still can't believe it. How did Mu Wanru go crazy? Which hospital is she in? An hospital, Song Yunshi replied. Song Inya seemed to be deep in thought. What? You don't believe my words, and you want to see it for yourself? Yunshi, pretending to be unhappy. Song Inya hurriedly replied, No, brother, listen to yourself. Just a little. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. She, what? Song. It's impossible for a person to go crazy for no reason. She must have been agitated. That's enough. You're so stupid. Don't think too much about those useless things. Song Inya said angrily. What? Brother, you only know how to make fun of me. Chapter 1535. After sitting in the living room for a while, Song Yunshi went to the study to do some reading. Song Inya, on the other hand, sat on the sofa in a daze for a long time. Has Mu Wanru really gone mad? An hospital was the only provincial psychiatric hospital in the capital. There were many mentally ill patients there. Is Mu Wanru really in there? The next afternoon, Song Inya drove to the hospital. When she entered, the security guard stopped her. Hello, miss. You are... She panicked for a moment, but maintained her composure. I'm here to visit a patient's family. Oh, come and register, then. The security guard instructed. She casually wrote down a name and number on a registration book and was allowed to enter. She walked to the inpatient department. As soon as she stepped through the door, she felt a chill in her bones. The lobby of the inpatient department was extremely spacious, but it gave off an extremely oppressive feeling. The wind that blew from all directions invaded his body, causing him to shudder in fear. She had heard that the psychiatric hospital was a very scary place. Even a mentally healthy person would be driven crazy by the oppressive atmosphere here. This was not a lie at all. It was really too oppressive here. It gave off the feeling of hell on earth. When she reached the third floor, she could even hear several hysterical voices from the end of the long corridor. Song Inya looked over suspiciously. The wards here had a double-layered security design, with a wooden door and a stainless steel railing blocking the outside. A mentally deranged patient was grabbing the stainless steel door and shaking it wildly while screaming. His shrill cries echoed in the corridor, making one feel inexplicably flustered. How do you do, miss? The sudden inquiry from behind startled her. She screamed uncontrollably and turned around abruptly, only to see a nurse standing awkwardly at the same spot, looking at her in confusion. I'm sorry. Did I scare you? When she saw that it was a nurse from the hospital, she was secretly annoyed at herself for making a fuss over nothing. She immediately calmed herself down and smiled. I'm sorry. I was a little frightened. It's all right. The nurse paused and asked carefully, Miss, who are you looking for? It's like this. I'm looking for someone. She's in this hospital. I'm here to visit her. Okay. May I ask who the patient is? What's your name? Song Inya looked into her eyes and hesitated for a moment before slowly saying, Her name is Mu Wanru. Mu Wanru? The nurse had a suspicious look on her face. Clearly, she had never heard of this name before. Wait, I have her photo. Song Inya took out a photo of Mu Wanru from her bag and handed it to her. The nurse took it from her, but the moment her eyes fell on the photo, her expression changed. She immediately returned the photo to the Missy and shook her head. There's no such person here. However, her panicked expression clearly proved that she was lying at this moment. Song Inya, who had studied psychology to a certain extent, observed the nurse's expression and was certain that she had recognized the person in the photo at first glance. She was lying. Chapter 1536. Mu Wanru was clearly in this hospital. However, due to some unspoken regulations, or for the sake of confidentiality, the nurse said that there was no such person in the hospital. Song Inya smiled and said calmly, I know she's here. I'm her friend. Can you bring me to see her? No way. The moment the nurse opened her mouth, she realized that she had misspoken and quickly corrected herself. Miss, I've already said that there's no such person in this hospital. You mustn't make things difficult for me. Hee. Why would I make things difficult for you when you put it that way? Song Inya smiled gently. She then slowly reached into her handbag and walked toward the nurse. I know she's here. I'm here today to visit an old friend. I don't have any other intentions, nor do I have any intention of making things difficult for you. As she spoke, she inched closer to the nurse and carefully took out something wrapped in a stack of letters from her handbag. She then stuffed it into the nurse's hands with a smile in her eyes, expressing her friendliness first. The moment the nurse's hand touched the thick bundle of letters, her heart skipped a beat. The sky is so thick. She pinched the letter with her fingertips and roughly knew what number was in the letter. The nurse's face became a little hesitant. She looked at the woman with a friendly smile in front of her with some hesitation. Miss, I won't hide it from you. The person in the photo you showed me earlier is indeed in this hospital. However, the director has made it clear that this patient's identity is very special, so no one is allowed to visit her. No matter who you meet, you have to announce to the public that there's no such person. The corners of Song Inya's lips curled up, but the smile in her eyes deepened. I know the rules. As long as you bring me to see her, I'll pretend that nothing happened after that. After a pause, she added, as long as you bring me to see this person, I'll give you more benefits. Trust me. The nurse hesitated for a long time, but the thick stack of letters in her hands was too tempting. She had a count in her hands. She touched the letter and found that it was definitely a 5-digit number. What a tempting number. She had worked in this hospital for 3 years, and her monthly salary, including performance, was at most 3,000 to 4,000 yuan. Such a huge sum of money was equivalent to a pie falling from the sky. She held it in her hands and was reluctant to let it go. Humans were all greedy for money. With money, it was naturally easy to pave the way. The nurse was finally tempted. She took the money and led the way without saying a word. Song Inya followed her all the way out of the inpatient department. After passing through 18 winding water bridges and corridors, they arrived at a small, secluded building. This small building was the old building of Dan Hospital. 10 years ago, after the government allocated funds to trim the new building, this old inpatient building was completely abandoned. However, because the quality of the building was still acceptable, it was not torn down. After some renovation, it became a dormitory. Chapter 1537. She had a count in her hands. She touched the letter and found that it was definitely a 5-digit number. What a tempting number. She had worked in this hospital for 3 years, and her monthly salary, including performance, was at most 3,000 to 4,000 yuan. Such a huge sum of money was equivalent to a pie falling from the sky. She held it in her hands and was reluctant to let it go. Humans were all greedy for money. It was naturally easy to pave the way with money. The nurse was finally tempted. She took the money and led the way without saying a word. Song Inya followed her all the way out of the inpatient department. After passing through 18 winding water bridges and corridors, they arrived at a small, remote building. This small building was the hospital's old building. 10 years ago, after the government allocated funds to renovate a new building, this old inpatient department building was completely abandoned. However, because the building's quality was passable, it was not demolished. After some renovation, it became a dormitory. The nurse led her all the way to the third floor and stopped at the door of a ward on the third floor. She then reminded her, "The patient's condition is very unstable. She often goes crazy, so you can't go in. You can only stand at the door and take a few glances. Also, it's best to stay away from the door, lest you hurt yourself." Song Inya nodded. "Okay, I understand. Then, I'll open the door now. Please take a few steps back." Song Inya obediently took a few steps back and watched nervously. The nurse unlocked the iron door first, then pushed open another door inside. She then closed the iron door and locked it again. Song Inya could not help but walk forward. Through the heavy metal bars, she finally saw the back of the person in the ward. She hugged her knees and sat on the bed with her back facing the door. Her whole body was trembling slightly, and her hands were constantly pulling at her hair. A piece of hair that had been pulled out was on the snow-white bedsheet. However, she did not seem to know the pain as she continued to pull at her hair, as if she could not wait to pull out all the messy hair on her head. In his memory, Mu Wanru had long hair that made people envious. It was black and shiny, with a natural and beautiful luster. But now, her beautiful hair seemed to have been cut short by a lot. It was so messy that it looked like it had been a long time since she washed it. Her hair was dirty and messy. Because it was too greasy, her hair seemed to have clumped together. She seemed to feel that her scalp was extremely itchy. She scratched and pulled at it. Some places were scratched so hard that a bald patch was left. Song Inya furrowed her brows in disgust. As soon as the door was opened, a stench from inside hit her in the face. It was as if the person had not bathed for a long time. The combination of the sour stench and the stench of excrement was nauseating. When the patient's condition is unstable, he often loses control of his bowels and excrement. His clothes are stained with his excrement, so there's a stench in the room, the nurse explained. Song Inya was a clean freak, so when she smelled the stench, she could not help taking out her handkerchief to cover her nose and mouth. The nurse smiled a little awkwardly. "I didn't have time to clean it up today. She must be filthy now. Why don't you come again next time?" "No need." Chapter 1538. The nurse hesitated for a long time before nodding her head. Before she left, she did not forget to remind her, "Don't get too close to her. Be careful that she doesn't hurt you." With that, she left. Song Inya stood at the door and watched for a while before carefully probing. "Sis Wanru?" The back of the person on the bed stiffened, as if she had heard her voice. She then turned to stone and did not respond. Song Inya furrowed her brows and was about to speak when the person on the bed suddenly turned her head around. A face as pale as a ghost came into view, giving her a fright. She could not help taking a step back and patting her chest, still feeling a little scared. Mu Wanru suddenly got off the bed. Her pair of empty eyes stared at her blankly, lifeless and numb. "Who are you?" Sis Wanru, don't you recognize me?" Song Inya tilted her head, clearly puzzled. Mu Wanru looked a little timid, as if the woman standing at the door was a terrifying scourge. She leaned against the wall and trembled in fear. "Don't come over. Don't hurt me. Go away, go away." Song Inya was taken aback. She remained expressionless for a long time before the corners of her lips curled up into an arrogant smirk. "Don't you recognize me? Haha, I'm Inya." As she spoke, she sized her up with disgust. A sinister look appeared in her eyes. "Haha, Mu Wanru, oh Mu Wanru, so you have a day like this too? I didn't expect you to end up in such a miserable state. How pitiful." She gloated and mocked her as she sized her up in disdain. "Look at you. Take a good look at you now. You're dirty and sloppy. How disgusting. How does it feel to be abandoned?" Song Inya paused for a moment before spitting out 2 words. "You deserve it." Because of these 2 words, Mu Wanru's expression changed. She looked like she understood, but also like she didn't. Her expression was a little strange. "Mu Wanru, I've wanted to say this to you for a long time." Song Inya stood at the door and looked down at Mu Wanru condescendingly. It was as if the latter was nothing more than a pitiful ant beneath her feet that she could easily trample to death. "Brother Mu is mine. It belongs to me." "Brother Mu." Mu Wanru repeated it a few times in her mind. Suddenly, the look in her eyes changed. A monstrous hatred appeared in her eyes. It was twisted and terrifying. She suddenly pounced at the door like a hungry wolf. Both her hands reached out the metal bars and grabbed at her angrily. Song Inya, who was standing very close to the door, was caught off guard and could not dodge in time. 2 bloody scratches were left on her face. She screamed and covered her face as she took a few steps back. She felt a burning pain on her face where she had scratched. When she touched it with her fingers, she felt a sharp pain. B*TCH. What are you doing? Song Inya covered her face and yelled at her. Mu Wanru, on the other hand, seemed to have gone crazy. She kept making muffled sounds as her hands scratched in her direction. She was slurring her words and could not make out what she was saying at all. Song Inya hurriedly took out a hand mirror to check her face. There were 2 bloody scratches on her face from the other's sharp nails. Chapter 1539. Song Inya wiped her hands with a handkerchief and frowned in pain. She then looked at Mu Wanru's long fingernails, which were embedded with a mixture of black and yellow filth, and felt nauseous again. How disgusting. Oh God, just how dirty were her hands. When she pounced on her, the gust of wind that came with her was accompanied by a fishy stench. Song Inya looked at the room behind her and saw that it was extremely dirty. There were feces, vomit, and all kinds of urine stains in the room. It was a sight that made one's scalp tingle. Mu Wanru screamed like a madwoman. Yin sure, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. Song Inya was stunned. Suddenly, a strange and vicious expression appeared on her face. You recognize me? Yin sure. Even if you turn into ashes, I'll still remember you. I won't let you off. You deserve to die. You deserve to die. You killed my child. You're the one who killed my child. Child? What child? Song Inya was stunned. Why did she keep saying that Yin sure killed her child? Wasn't Mu Wanru infertile? Could it be, was it her and Brother Mu's child? Song Inya's face turned ashen when she thought of this. B*TCH. Where did your child come from? Song Inya easily lost her rationality when it came to Mu Yaja. She became hysterical and questioned Mu Wanru sternly. Say it. Is the child yours and Brother Mu's? Say it. Say it. Mu Wanru did not seem to hear her, though. She pounced on the metal door with a strange and sinister expression on her face. It's all your fault. It's all your fault. You're the one who killed my child. It's all your fault. Return my child to me. Return my child to me. Song Inya panicked. She rushed forward and slapped Mu Wanru, leaving a deep handprint on her cheek. B*TCH. You haven't answered my question. Say it. Where did your child come from? Ha ha ha. My child is gone. It's gone. My child was killed by you. Mu Wanru, however, did not answer her question. She looked extremely depressed as she slid to the ground, her eyes empty and lifeless. The child is gone. The child is gone. Yin sure, you deserve to die. You deserve to die. Song was filled with anger. She had lost her rationality, but when she regained her senses, she sneered at herself. She had actually stooped to the level of a lunatic. Where did the child come from? She must have been delusional. She had been delusional. She had been delusively. Song Inya looked at Mu Wanru. While she was angry, she was also secretly pleased. At least Mu Wanru was crazy. Ha! This was the consequence of going against her. Who told you to fight with me? Song Inya suddenly cursed. Who told you to fight with me for Brother Mu? Mu Wanru, this is your retribution. You can't win against me. You and Yin sure are the same. Brother Mu is mine. None of you have the right to fight with me. With that, she snorted and turned to leave. After leaving the ward, the nurse hurriedly chased after her. Just as she was about to speak, she was surprised to see the 2 red marks on her face. Chapter 1540. Oof. She's really crazy. She doesn't even recognize me anymore. She just pounced on me and scratched my face. Song Inya's face was sullen and her eyes were fierce. When she turned to look at the nurse, she forced a smile. It's fine, though. After all, she's already crazy. I can't stoop to her level. The nurse exchanged a few pleasantries before begging her again. Please don't tell anyone about what happened today. Otherwise, I'll definitely be fired by the hospital. I beg of you. All right, I got it. Song Inya suddenly asked, "Oh, right. What's your name?" Li Qian. Okay. Song Inya turned around and left. Before she left, she went to the hospital director's office and told him about what had happened today. She mentioned one thing. There's a nurse in your hospital. I asked her to take me to visit a patient. She actually shamelessly asked me for a red packet. How exactly does your hospital train its employees? Even a lowly nurse knows how to be corrupt and accept bribes? The director's face turned white after hearing her words. He immediately made a phone call and confirmed that there was indeed such a thing. Then, he fired the caregiver named Li Qian on the spot. Song Inya smiled smugly and left the hospital. If she was bullied, no one would have an easy time. After resting for a few days, Yin Shishir was notified to join the production team and attend the press conference held by the production team of Lethal Beauty. It was not until all the main creators were present at the press conference that Yin Shishir learned about the full lineup of the production team. The female lead was confirmed to be Lin Ji, while the male lead was Hua Jin, a popular actor in ancient costumes. Lin Ji was a famous actress in ancient costumes, so there was no doubt that she would play the female lead. As for Hua Jin, being the most popular actor in ancient costumes, he was expected to play the male lead. At the press conference, Yin Shishir saw Hua Jin's real face for the first time. Because it was quite a distance away, Yin Shishir could only think of one word from that fleeting glance. Charming all living things. He's too seductive. This man was too beautiful. This kind of beauty almost subverted the barriers between genders. Looking from afar, the palm-sized handsome face was as white as jade, with a pair of peach blossom eyes that were as charming as silk, and the corners of his eyes were long and narrow. The perfect lines of his facial features were like a sculpture made by the gods. Every detail was meticulously carved, extremely exquisite and beautiful. Qinzhou had mentioned him before. This Hua Jin is the most popular young actor in ancient costumes nowadays. His background is not simple, so you have to be careful. Stay away from him and don't get too close to him. Being crowned as the #1 scholar in ancient